Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto met Avatar Goddess and become her underling? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support, and follow the Madhat866 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. A 6-year-old Naruto groaned as he looked up to the opening of the hole he'd just fallen into. He'd been running from a group of shinobi wearing strange animal masks after pulling a prank on the manager of the orphanage who had kicked him out on his birthday. He thought that the large section of fenced-off forest made for a great hiding spot. That was until he fell into the large pit he was currently stuck in. Well, it looks like a young cub has entered my den. A feminine voice called out from a small cave within the hole. Who's there? A woman emerged from the mouth of the cave. Her long flowing purple hair cascading down her back. Her F-cup breasts were contained by 2 straps of crimson fabric that left her inner cleavage, and her toned stomach exposed. Around her waist was wrapped a long skirt that flowed down to her ankles with 2 large V-shaped slits on either side that created a large loincloth, leaving her muscular legs exposed. Her wrists and ankles were adorned with golden bracelets. But the most striking thing about her was that she seemed to have the head of a lion. Do not fear, little one. I am Sekhmet. Long before your shinobi world came to be, I was one of the gods who ruled over what you now call Kaze no Kuni. Naruto stared up at the woman in awe. She was much taller than him. He'd guess at least 6 feet in height, if not more. If you ruled Kaze no Kuni, then how did you end up in Konoha? She smiled, as she summoned 2 chairs made of stone, and beckoned him to sit. Years ago, roughly 10,000 years before the rise of your shinobi world, the humans who inhabited this world brought themselves to the brink of extinction. When they did, the different pantheons of gods came together, and reformed the world into what you now know as the elemental nations, as well as the unknown regions to the west of Kaze no Kuni. However, the fact remained that because of its location as an island, as well as its collectivist society, one of the nations had the highest number of survivors. This nation worshipped the Shinto gods that your people worship today. As such, their descendants did as well, until Shinto, oddly enough one of the smallest religions of that time, became the dominant religion, followed only by an offset of it called Jashinism. As worship of the other gods, and the number of sacrifices made to them waned, so did their power. This caused them to slowly lose their ability to grant miracles on a larger scale. Meanwhile, the Shinto gods' powers were increasing further, driving new generations to their worship. This continued until the majority of the gods became so weak that they could no longer retain their immortality. As such, they descended from the heavens, and sought to try to recultivate their flocks here on earth. However, they soon realized that it was not to be, and faded from this world. Naruto stared at her, completely engrossed in her tale. Then how did you survive? I am a goddess of battle, and of healing. As such, I was still able to perform enough small-scale miracles to retain worshippers throughout the generations, though they were admittedly few, and far between, she said with a hint of sorrow. As such, I was able to continue my existence up until now. However, the last of my disciples are slowly dying out, meaning that I too will soon fade from this world. The young boy's eyes widened in shock. What if I worshipped you? Would you truly forsake Kami to worship a dying deity? Her eyebrow raised in suspicion. Kami has let people beat me, and starve me. She let a 6-year-old shiver in the rain with nothing but a cardboard box for shelter. If anyone did any forsaking, it was her. His eyes burned with conviction as he spoke. Sekhmet smiled, running her hand over the boy's cheek. I'm glad that you would offer to buy me one more lifetime to watch this world turn. It won't be just one more lifetime, SEK-chan. Just you watch. When I grow up, I'm going to have a whole bunch of kids, and we'll all worship you until you're stronger than you were in the old world. He beamed, before enveloping her midriff in a hug. The goddess smiled, as she hugged him back, her hand running through his golden locks affectionately, the color reminding her of Ra's own sunband. Thank you, my child. I shall help you out of here. During my time observing you shinobi, I have recorded your new way of doing combat in my mind. When you leave here, I will begin work on weapons for you, as well as creating scrolls for you to learn from. However, to do this I will need more power than I currently have, as what I have is barely enough to sustain myself. How can I help? Simply burn an offering of food, and recite the phrase "I offer this in praise to the goddess Sekhmet. I will receive it as nourishment, and it will grant me more strength. I will start with the scrolls as they will help you to acquire more offerings. This way I can make you quality weapons. I can't have my avatar running around with subpar weapons now, can I?" Naruto shook his head, as he felt himself begin to levitate out of the hole. "Don't worry, SEK-chan, I'll make sure to make plenty of sacrifices, and once we're both big and strong I'll come back and marry you." Sekhmet was happy that the fur of her lion-like head allowed her to hide the blush his innocent words had caused. "I'll hold you to that, Naruto," she whispered, returning to her cave to rest. 3 years later, Naruto had held true to his word, and after leaving the forest had ventured into the forest surrounding Konoha to procure some fish for his goddess. Once she'd had enough sustenance, Sekhmet had begun work on a training regimen for the young boy. It had started out simple enough, 25 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, before jogging 10 laps around the outer fencing of her domain. Naruto smiled fondly, remembering his early training under the goddess. She'd known his plight within the village, and as such had focused the majority of his early education on stealth, allowing him to steal money and food to sacrifice to the goddess. Now Naruto sat in the classroom of his first year at the Shinobi Academy, waiting for the scarred teacher in front of him to finish his introduction lecture. Now that he was in the academy, who could put some of his ill-gotten gains to good use? A student could technically graduate at any time. The only catch was that they had to pass the final exam. With 3 years of training from a woman who had been around long before the shinobi world began, he already had the skills necessary to do so, especially with the watered-down curriculum the academy currently held during these peaceful times. However, he understood that if he showed these skills on the first day with no prior training, he would instantly be questioned by the elderly Hokage about where he learned these skills. The written test would be easy enough to explain, as all of the information on it was available in the public library, even though he did have to use the henge technique to get in. It was the kunai and shuriken throwing as well as the taijutsu and ninjutsu portions that he would be hard-pressed to explain. Which is where the money he'd been squirreling away came from. After he had informed the old man of the incident involving the matron, he'd been given an apartment within Konoha's red light district. According to the Hokage, it belonged to the Odame, and as he didn't have any known relatives upon his death, it was left in his hands as the incoming Hokage when he died. Naruto knew this to be false, as Sekhmet had informed him of his parents' identities upon his 8th birthday, and he had surmised that the old man was simply holding his inheritance until he thought he was strong enough to take his father's name. Since the apartment belonged to the Hokage officially, he had been allowed to live there free of charge. However, he still received the full orphan stipend under the law, which is where his excuse for having money came from. While it was true that Naruto had used some of what would have been his rent money to hire genin for D-rank missions to help renovate his apartment, as it hadn't been maintained in the 7 years since his father's death at the hands of his tenant, he'd simply kept the rest in a blood seal within a secret safe he'd installed himself within his closet. He didn't pay rent, and he regularly hunted for his own food, only ever buying 1 meal a day from the Ichirakus, even if that one meal consisted of 10 bowls of ramen. And once a week, when they restocked, they would order extra vegetables that they would sell to him at just above cost, as not to make him feel like he was taking advantage of them. He'd buy the vegetables in bulk from them, and then use fuinjutsu to keep them fresh within his scrolls. Aside from that, the only thing he had spent his money on was kunai, shuriken, and calligraphy supplies from the academy section of one of the local shinobi stores. When class was finally dismissed for the day, Naruto bound his way up the stairs of the Hokage Tower to the mission desk, where Hiruzen just so happened to be sitting in for the day. "Ah, Naruto-kun, what a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you?" "Hi Gigi. I was just wanting to fill out a mission request," Naruto replied, giving the elderly man a firm hug which was returned, before taking the mission request form. "More renovations?" "Not this time. I noticed that my class happened to be full of the heirs to most of Konoha's prominent clans, which means that they've likely been receiving training from their parents, and will likely receive it throughout the time we're in school, so I figured if I want to compete with them, I'd better get a tutor. I know the village has a law stating that enrolled students can receive training if they submit a mission request form and pay for it as a mission. I think old man Nidame was the one who made that law, right?" Hiruzen chuckled, thinking of what his sensei's reaction would be to being referred to as old man. Yes, Naruto-kun, it was in fact Tobirama-sensei who made that rule in an effort to even the playing field between civilian-born shinobi and those who came from clans. Naruto nodded as he filled out the form. Yeah, though it only really helps those who can afford it. After all, according to this mission form, this qualifies as a low C-rank mission since I'll be hiring at least a chunin for it, and it's considered a long-term mission. The minimum amount is 50,000 ryo a month. That's at least 6 months' rent. Hiruzen nodded with a small sigh. Yes, he did try his best to balance it all out, though the result was a system that favored our more affluent citizens. Naruto nodded and handed the paperwork to one of the chunin working the desk. No sooner had the man added the mission to the docket than a woman wearing a chunin vest over a mesh shirt and a brown miniskirt walked in and began looking at the list of missions. Whoa, someone's offering 60,000 ryo a month to train some brat. Where do I sign up? She asked, finishing off a stick of dango. With this young man right here, he'll be your client for the duration of the contract, Enko-chan. Enko turned and came face to face with a mess of blonde spiky hair. Hello, future sugar daddy. She smiled. Name's Enko Mitarashi, and I'll be your tutor. You got a name, brat? Name's Naruto Uzumaki. Also, isn't it a little unprofessional to call your client a brat pineapple head? Naruto instantly regretted his words as he felt the woman spike her killer intent. He breathed a sigh of relief when she swatted him on the back, and began laughing. I like your style, kid. Most others academy students would have passed out from that. I get a similar feeling when I go hunting in that big fenced-off area, so I'm kind of used to it. Every shinobi in the room instantly stopped what they were doing, as Hiruzen looked at his adoptive grandson in concern. Naruto-kun, what fenced-off area are you referring to? You know that big fenced-off forest with the huge tower in the middle of it. He tilted his head in confusion. It's over in that direction, he said, pointing out the window in the exact direction everyone hoped he wasn't. Naruto-kun, how long have you been hunting there? Since I was 6? Why, does it belong to someone? I thought it didn't since it was full of wild animals. Naruto-kun, the place you've been hunting is a training ground that is normally reserved for chunin-level shinobi, and above. It is one of the single most dangerous places in this village. Naruto chuckled nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. You're kidding, right? Nope, squirt. That place is called Training Ground 44. Though most people just call it the Forest of Death. Enko smirked. You've got a set of brass balls on you if you've been hanging around there for the last 3 years. And since you've got experience there, that's where we'll be training. Enko, you can't be serious? A red-eyed chunin at one of the desks yelled out. Relax, Nai-chan, I go in there all the time, and the squirt did say he's been going in there for 3 years, so it's not like he's not prepared. Plus, I'm not dumb enough to train him in the actual forest. We'll use the area in and around the tower. The seals there will keep the animals away, so that's why I never found any animals around there. Yeah, but what were you doing at the tower if you went in there to hunt? Well, the doors were never locked. So before I told Gigi about the old lady kicking me out of the orphanage when I was 6, I spent about a year sleeping in there whenever it was cold or raining. The room's temperature suddenly dropped, as Enko's hair fell over her face, and Kurenai snapped her pen in anger. She did what? Enko's tone promised a slow and painful death. Why, yeah, when I turned 6, she kicked me out, and said demons shouldn't be allowed to exist in our village, go live in the woods with the other animals. I was confused until I realized I was the Kyuubi Jinjuriki. The room once again fell silent, as everyone stared at him in shock. And Naruto-kun, how did I find out? He smiled somberly. When you spend the first few years of your life with people avoiding you, and whispering things about foxes behind your back, and then some lady straight up calls you a demon, it's not hard to figure out. Especially considering I was born the night the Kyuubi attacked. And any time I flare my chakra, a complex seal appears on my stomach. Enko began chuckling heavily as she looked back at the Hokage with a sparkle in her eye. Old man, that was a S-rank secret punishable by death if anyone spoke about it to the kids' generation, right? Yes, it was. Naruto noticed that his Gigi seemed unusually serious when he spoke those words. Well, considering she came right out and said it. I believe execution is in order. She is currently sitting in Konoha prison for child abandonment and defrauding the village, as she was still receiving Naruto-kun's orphan stipend even after throwing him out. I'll leave her to you at a later date. For now, take Naruto-kun home. Anko nodded, as she took the blonde boy by the hand, and walked him out. When they arrived, Anko was surprised to find derogatory graffiti on the wall surrounding the property. Ignore that, Sophie-chan will clean it up later. Sophie-chan? One of the orphans who lives in the area. She normally sweeps up for one of the bars in the area, and uses the money along with her stipend to rent the loft above it. But she cleans up the graffiti whenever one of the villagers gets brave enough to try something here, and I give her a few extra ryo to buy herself some new books. She's a year above me at the academy right now, and wants to become a medic. Anko nodded, as she watched him flare his chakra on a seal near the entrance. I paid for a mission, and had security seals placed on the area to stop break-ins. Anko whistled at the smarts the kids seemed to have. Doesn't that bother the other tenants? I live here alone. Gigi owns the place, so he lets me rent one of the units since he wasn't doing anything with it. Said it belonged to the fourth, and he got it when he passed, and had no use for it. Anko nodded, as they walked upstairs to his unit. You said something about the villagers being brave enough to try anything here? What did you mean? In the red light district, people only care about your money being as green as the next guy's. Your history doesn't mean anything. We've got everyone from retired shinobi to people wanted in other countries. Nobody minds the villagers coming in and out because they're typically here to blow their money on the hookers, gambling halls, and bars. However, you can think of this place as a village within a village. We take care of our own, and anyone who threatens one of our own is violently shown out of here. As long as no one winds up dead, the umbu don't come sniffing around. Hold on a minute. Anko watched as Naruto leaned over the side of his balcony and threw what looked to be 3 500 ryo coins at a man sleeping against the perimeter wall of his complex. Takashi, you lazy drunk, go use the bathhouse to wash up, and get home before Harai skins you alive, and feeds you your own balls for dinner. Said man collected the coins and got up before disposing of his sake bottle in the nearby trash bin, and flipping Naruto off as he walked away. What was that about? He's a drunk, but he only drinks on his days off, and only if he puts in enough hours that he can hand his wife the bill money, and some for their savings. Problem is she won't let him in the house if he smells like booze, and he always forgets to put some money aside to wash up before going home. So I typically toss him the money for the baths, and a bottle of mouthwash, and he puts it back in my mailbox on his way to work. Anko laughed, as she sat back on Naruto's couch. A man his age being babysat by a 9-year-old. I love it. Over the next 3 weeks Anko proceeded to train Naruto on weekends, and after school. She tested him on his agility and speed first, seeing as her style focused mostly around those two aspects. She was interested in watching him hunt the animals around the forest of death. She watched as he stalked one of the large boars that called the forest home, before he pounced on its back from his perch atop one of the trees and slashed its throat wide open. She was impressed with his technique, even more so that he had thought to check the tops of the trees for other predators, before locking his focus on the target in front of him. You did well, kid. What do you normally do with a kill that large? I normally dress it, and separate the cuts, putting some in the fridge for the week, and the rest in the freezer for later. Though I do turn some of it into jerky for snacks during lunch and training. Those skills are good to have on a mission when food stores may be scarce, she said, as she watched him skillfully skin the boar. By the end of the 3 weeks Anko had already been forced to teach him the henge, kawawami, and the kagebushin. The last she had gotten special permission for from Hiruzen due to his high reserves. It was startling how quickly the boy seemed to pick up on her teachings. Within his first month he had already graduated from the academy and was now doing several solo D-rank missions a day, while he awaited his classmates to graduate. He would occasionally take on a low-risk C-rank mission alongside Anko when she had time. The increase in funds allowed him to convert one of the other units in his building into a small temple to Sekhmet, which contained an altar that allowed him to burn larger amounts of sacrifices. His progress in the matter was so great in fact that the goddess had called him back to her den much earlier than anticipated. You have been busy, my child. I never expected you to come this far this quickly. I promised you that I would help you in any way I could, and that you have. Your help has allowed me to finish your first weapon several years ahead of schedule. She smiled, pulling a strange curved blade from behind her back. This is a khopesh. It was the style of sword we used in my homeland. The way the blade curves allows for more leverage in each swing, making it a great tool for cutting through armor. Naruto smiled, and bowed respectfully as he took the blade. Thank you so much, Esike-chan. The goddess smiled, rubbing his hair. My pleasure. After all, the sooner you get big and strong, the sooner you can come back and marry me, right? She smiled teasingly. Naruto's face lit up, as his cheeks became unusually warm. Esike-chan, don't say that if it's not true. I never said it was untrue. Though considering the miracle I am going to grant you once your class graduates in the form of a Kekkai Genkai, I do expect your village to place you in the CRA, where you will have multiple wives. Naruto tilted his head with a puzzled expression. You say that like it doesn't bother you? We gods have seen many polyamorous relationships. Plus you did promise to have lots of kids to continue worshipping me, so it would be a big help. Naruto blushed once again. Arrow goddess. She giggled, kissing his cheek. Now run along. I left a scroll with the katas for your sword in your temple, along with an explanation of how you got it. Thank you, my goddess. 4 years later, Naruto stood outside of the academy. His eyebrow twitching. I still don't understand why I have to be saddled with a pair of these brats that think being a shinobi is some sort of game. Because I asked you to, the voice of Sekhmet spoke within his mind. Due to his years in her company, and his faithful service had allowed her to form a mental connection with him. Worry not though. Thanks to my influence growing once again, I managed to create a small miracle, and alter the team assignments to create your own harem team. It will be up to you to seduce them, but I have little doubt you'll manage to do that. So what you're saying is that you're pimping out your most loyal follower to create more followers. You make it sound like you don't enjoy it. Remember, Anko, I knew you were gonna bring her into this. Though I don't disagree with you, so who did you get on my team? Now Naruto-kun, you should know by now that I don't like to ruin a surprise by telling. She giggled. It was worth a shot. It looks like they're starting, he said as he walked inside. He took a look around the room, taking a look at the other occupants of the classroom. He had finished sizing them up, when one of the room's occupants, Kiba Inuzuka, decided to make his opinion known. You lost or something, asshole? This room is only for those who graduated the academy. Isn't that the Uzumaki kid who quit showing up during freshman year? He's a dropout. Sakura shouted. Iruka decided now was the time to make his presence known. Calm down, everyone. Naruto Uzumaki did not drop out of the academy. He took early graduation 4 years ago, and has been taking missions as a genin while he waited for the rest of you to graduate. You mean to tell me that this idiot has been taking on missions, while I've been forced to sit through these lectures for 4 years? Sasuke cried out. While you did possess the practical skills required for early graduation, you lacked the technical knowledge. If you had studied those sections of the library, and not merely focused on ninjutsu, you could have graduated early as well. Iruka explained. Sasuke fumed but stayed quiet as Iruka began announcing the teams. Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei is Kakashi Hatake. Team 8, Naruto Uzumaki, Ino Yamanaka, and Hinata Hyuga. Your sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. What? Why does the dobe get the team full of babes? Iruka threw a piece of chalk with blinding speed, striking the young Inuzuka in the head. The teams were selected by the Hokage himself. If you have a problem, you can take it up with him. This seemed to quiet the boy, and Iruka continued. Team 9 is still in rotation. Team 10 will be Shino Abirame, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi. As Iruka dismissed the class for lunch, a red-eyed woman entered the classroom. Team 8, meet me outside, she said, though she looked at Naruto with a slight coldness. Seems the prejudice in this village is still strong, he thought as he got up and followed her. The 3 genin followed their new instructor to a small tea house where they took their seats in a booth across from their teacher. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. I will be your jonin instructor for the genin portion of your careers. I specialize in genjutsu, but I am skilled in the other shinobi disciplines. Naruto internally scowled. To him, the woman came off as braggadocios with a holier-than-thou attitude. Will we be taking the secondary exam? Kurenai's eyes once again turned cold as she turned to him. No, due to your early graduation the results would be tainted if you participated, but we can't administer the test without the entirety of the team present, therefore your team is exempt. You'll report to Training Ground 8 tomorrow morning at 0600 to begin training. The rest of lunch was a quiet affair with the genin and the jonin introducing themselves. After lunch, Ino and Hinata stood and left. Kurenai made to leave when Naruto stopped her and asked her to stay for a moment. What do you wish to talk about, Genin Uzumaki? Naruto interlocked his fingers in front of him on the table and activated a privacy seal on the table. This. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. What do you mean this? And who taught you how to create a privacy seal? I've been training as a genin for 4 years while waiting for my classmates to graduate. Yes, but from what I know of your mission record it consists of mostly solo D-rank missions. Kurenai replied in a slightly condescending tone. Keyword there is mostly. I've also taken on my fair share of C-rank extermination missions alongside Enko Midarashi. I've also received training from her over the past 4 years in the different disciplines, including Fuinjutsu up to level 5. As for what this means, it's the inherent animosity that you seem to have for me, Jonin Yuhi. Now I hope that I'm wrong in the assumption that this stems from my condition, and you actually have some kind of valid reasoning. Kurenai let out a small sigh as she leaned forward, tenting her fingers in front of her face. It is partially that, yes. I hope that you understand. My father was a jonin who dies the night of the attack. Naruto's eyes shifted down in a somber expression. A lot of people died that night, my own parents included. He said before looking up at her, his hands moving to clasp in his lap. I do give you my condolences, but an apology from me would be disingenuous considering I was less than an hour old when it happened. I understand. I hope you understand that doesn't make the pain go away. I do. I also understand that we cannot have a cohesive unit if our squad leader is holding on to animosity towards a member of the team. So, tell me what the other part of it is. Kurenai sighed once again. This genin had a gaze that far exceeded his years and looked as though it could drag the truth out of her by the ankles if he wanted to. I originally wanted Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga as a tracking and reconnaissance team. I am also well aware of your relationship with the Hokage, and I suspect you used your influence with him to get yourself on a team solely comprised of women. For what reason I can't say, but given that you're a young man in the height of puberty I can give a few suggestions. Naruto's gaze turned cold as ice and he released a startling amount of killer intent. Kurenai hated to admit it, but it left her shaking in her sandals a bit, and sent a cold chill down her spine. Let me make myself perfectly clear, Jonin Yuhi, he said in a cold, stern tone. I have never utilized my relationship with the Hokage for personal gain. I graduated early on my own merits. I was selected for your team by the Hokage using the same criteria used for every other shinobi that graduates from the academy. I have no personal interest in who is on my team. I am only interested in protecting this village and furthering my own aspirations. I am willing to work with you, however this only works if you are willing to meet me halfway. Kurenai had the decency to look embarrassed at her own actions. My apologies, I was warned when I initially requested Kiba that he would have a lewd outlook, and would likely hit on me and Hinata, so I wrongly assumed a male classmate of his would have a similar form of behavior. That's like saying that because you're a female jonin from the same generation as Enko-chan that you'll dress proactively, and make lewd jokes in order to get a reaction out of me. Kiba was likely placed on Kakashi's team to avoid such behaviors. Sakura being around Sasuke would deprive him of any female attention. It doesn't hurt that Sakura is extremely outspoken and not afraid to resort to violence. She'll keep his behavioral problems in line. Shino is more logical and stoic. He's a lot less likely to butt heads with someone as tactical as Shikamaru, or take advantage of someone as gentle as Choji. They were given someone like Asuma due to his laid-back attitude and aptitude for improvised tactics. Kakashi was obviously chosen for training Sasuke's Sharingan when and if he unlocks it. You are a rookie jonin, and we are the pieces that didn't fit. We are the leftovers, Kurenai. 3 clan heir who didn't fit the mold but needed a standout jonin to keep the clan heads from raising a stink and crying favoritism. We're the team no one expects anything from. They're expecting us to tread water until eventually making Chunin in 2 to 4 years. Kurenai wanted to dispute the accusation, but she knew it was true. She was essentially handed 3 genin that nobody cared if she got results out of any time soon. You're saying you expect something different? I haven't been a shinobi nearly as long as you have. However, I have seen more than my fair share of death and destruction. I took my first life at the age of 8. Human trafficker in northern Fire Country. He was hiding out in some cave with a group of bandits, for his security. Had a group of girls in a cage ages ranging from 8 to 16. The things I saw them doing when I arrived. He clenched his knuckles until they turned white. I saw red. I summoned an army of clones and slaughtered every last one of them. It took Anko about an hour to calm me down afterwards before I was able to finish the mission. I'm not telling you this to make you feel pity. I'm telling you this so you understand that I have at least enough experience to recognize that this team has potential both as individuals and as a collective unit, but I need your help to bring it out. Hinata lacks confidence and is far too shy. I'm well aware of her crush on me and I'm more than willing to utilize it to help draw out her confidence. Ino, on the other hand, has confidence in spades, but her fangirl attitude and princess mentality prevent her from working cohesively with the team. Hinata, I feel, will need a firm but reassuring approach. While with Ino, the kid gloves are going to have to come off and we're going to have to knock the superiority complex out of her. Kurenai nodded as she sipped her tea, having refilled it from the pot while the two of them spoke. I'd have to agree with you on this. But I'd like to know how you plan to utilize Hinata's crush. I have worked with her for several years as a private tutor, and I've grown a fondness for her. I want to make sure that whatever you're planning isn't going to be detrimental to her. I'm not planning to do anything drastic if that's what you think. Just personally giving her positive reinforcement. Acknowledging her successes and helping her work through her failures. However, I have a different plan for. I'm hoping that at tomorrow's team meeting, I can get you to place the two of us in a spar against each other. I want to show her the gap in power between us, to help her realize the difference between someone who's playing at being a shinobi and coasting on her family's name, and a real shinobi. Kurenai thought for a moment. Even though she had 4 times the experience this boy had, he still seemed to be insightful and knowledgeable about what his team needed. Your plan sounds acceptable. I know that we don't necessarily have the most conventional dynamic. You have the same experience on the job as most Chunin. You and I are closer to colleagues than student and teacher. I know it's above your station, but I'm hoping I can count on you to help me push this team to be the best unit of this graduating year and possibly this generation. Naruto smiled and nodded his head. That aligns with my goals, so I am more than happy to help you with this. Kurenai raised an eyebrow as she leaned forward, exposing a bit more cleavage in her mesh undershirt. Despite believing Naruto in his lack of ulterior motivates when it came to team placement, she knew that he was still a hormonal teenager, and she hoped, though she knew it was a bit unethical, that showing a little skin would help draw the truth out of him. And what goals would that be? Naruto smiled, but inwardly chuckled. After years of spending time with Anko and Sekhmet, both of whom showed off a lot more skin in their daily manner of dress, those are personal, but if you earn my trust and build a relationship with me, I'll tell you more. Now I've had a lovely time, but I need to get going. I have religious duties to attend to. Kurenai looked a bit surprised. I didn't take you for the religious type. We all need to have faith in something. He smiled as he stood up. Oh, and Kurenai-chan, since you said we were closer to colleagues than teacher and student, may I offer a piece of advice? Kurenai nodded, looking at him curiously. And what would that be, Naruto-kun? She asked, letting the chan suffix go since the two of them were alone. Try to remember that I've been partnered with Anko-chan for the past 4 years before trying base-level seduction techniques to draw information out of me. He smiled and waved as he deactivated the seal and walked away, leaving Kurenai sitting there in shock. I'm going to kill you, Anko. After returning home, Naruto burned several steaks and fruits in his offering brazier, while he sat nearby and polished his sword. You seem to have fun playing cat and mouse with your instructor earlier, Sekhmet's voice sang teasingly in his head. If she wants to play, then she should know that I play to win. Naruto retorted as he inspected the sword. So you say, from where I was sitting you seemed to be egging it on more than required to win. I believe the words you used were base-level seduction techniques. I don't need to be reminded of what I said, I was there. He said with a slight pout that caused the goddess to giggle in response. Whatever you say, just don't come crying to me when she steps up her game. She's not going to step up her game. You insulted her seduction, her womanly charms. Take it from a woman goddess or not, she's going to want to heal her wounded pride by getting a reaction out of you. Naruto groaned as he put his sword back in its scabbard. This is what I get for worshipping such a beautiful perverted goddess. Sekhmet giggled at her champion's plight. Oh, I'm sure you'll live, Mr. Dramatic. Now get some rest, you've got a long day tomorrow. Yes, goddess, he said, as he put the brazier out and made his way back to his own apartment to sleep. Meanwhile, across town, Kurenai was regaling her friends Anko, Hana, and Yugao with the tale of her first team meeting. I blame you, Anko. I tried to pull a little information out of Naruto by showing a little cleavage which should have worked on a gen in his age, but because he's been hanging around with you for the last 4 years, all he did was laugh at me. Anko snorted in laughter in response as she downed another drink, while Hana and Yugao merely stifled a giggle. I could have told you that wouldn't work. He's seen more than a little cleavage helping me patch myself up during missions. You're going to have to do more than showing a little covered cleavage to get what you want. Anko had been told by Sekhmet that she wanted her to help push her female friends towards the blonde to aid in his goal of rebuilding her followers, as well as eventually asserting his own power and retaking the territory of her people in Kaze no Kuni. She'd been apprehensive at first, but the longer she had served the goddess, the more she saw things in the same way as Sekhmet. She wanted what was best for Naruto, and the end to the corruption that plagued what used to be her homeland. She had been adamant about the fact that she wouldn't force any of these women to be with Naruto, nor would Naruto ever force a woman who didn't want to be with him to be with him. She only wanted Anko to help facilitate the bonds and allow whatever would happen to happen naturally. So then what would you suggest? Step it up a little bit, go a little bit further as the two of you get comfortable. It won't be an easy game to win, believe me. I've been trying to win it for the last couple of years. But if we come at him from both sides, I think we can wear him down. Kurenai considered the idea as she and the rest of the girls continued their evening before retiring to her own home to prepare for her team meeting the next morning. As she did, a similar thought ran through both hers and Naruto's heads. This is going to be interesting. The following morning the team met at the training grounds as scheduled. As Naruto stood with his teammates in front of their new sensei, Naruto took notice of something in particular. It was faint, and he doubted either Ino or Hinata noticed, but after their encounter yesterday and the conversation he had with Sekhmet, he decided to pay closer attention to her appearance and her body language. What he noticed honestly surprised him, even if he didn't outwardly express it. First of all, she wasn't wearing her mesh undershirt like she had been the day before. It was also hard to notice due to the way her dress layered over her torso, but he could make out the faintest outline of her nipples poking through the bandage-like fabric. Kurenai noticed his gaze on her and gave him a sly, playful smirk. All right, team, let's get started on training. Hinata, go into the tree line and change into this, she said, tossing her a bag of clothing. Afterwards you'll start by running laps around the lake to help increase your stamina. Ino, since Naruto is already a veteran genin, and I've trained Hinata for a couple of years as her tutor, you're the only one I need to establish a baseline for. So, you'll be sparring against Naruto to determine that baseline. Ino scowled slightly but nodded. Okay, each of you take a spot across from each other and prepare. Kurenai instructed as she gave Naruto a look that said she hoped he knew what he was doing. Naruto nodded in return. Kurenai decided to trust his judgment, and brought her arm down, signaling the beginning of the match. Ino smirked and charged at him with what she thought was impressive speed, but to the two seasoned shinobi was pathetic even for an academy student. Naruto knocked the poorly executed punch away and laid a harsh slap across Ino's face. Ino gasped as she fell back on her ass and looked up at him, clutching her reddened cheek. You hit me, she cried out in shock, which left the other two shinobi floored at her reaction. It's a spar, Ino, we're supposed to hit each other. You shouldn't hit so hard. I know a shrimp-dicked cuck like you has never actually interacted with a woman, but you're supposed to treat us gently. She screamed, trying to insult him and guilt-trip him the best she could. Naruto merely gave a smile and turned his head to Kurenai. At first both women thought he was going to whine to Kurenai about her bullying, but they were both surprised at what he said. Kurenai-sensei, I am permitted to use my more unconventional tactics. As long as there's no killing or permanent injury, everything is allowed. Kurenai said a bit curiously. Naruto smiled before disappearing in a burst of speed, which caused Ino to look around worriedly as she got back to her feet. She gasped in shock as she felt a draft behind her. In an instant her purple thigh was yanked above her head, causing her to cry out in pain. A second later, after disappearing in a burst of speed alongside Naruto, she found herself dangling from a tree by her panties. The waistband hung from a kunai that was lodged in the trunk of the tree. She was only dangling a few feet above the ground, but it was enough to dig her underwear into her ass and sex. "Let me down! It hurts. Surrender," he said sternly as he pulled his belt from his pants and snapped the thick leather strap across her dangling ass cheek. Ino cried out as she pulled her knees up in shock and pain. "Stop! Let me down! I told you to surrender," he barked as he cracked the strap across her ass with more force than before. "Fine. I surrender, just let me down," Ino cried, tears flowing down her face. Naruto's hand flashed, and the waistband of her underwear was cut, allowing her to drop. She gasped and expected to fall on her sore backside once again. She was shocked, however, when she found herself cradled gently in the arms of her male teammate. Let this be a lesson in underestimating your opponents, and feeling superior to others due to your name without having any of your own accomplishments to back up your arrogance. Ino turned dark red at her compromising position. She was now sitting in the arms of her male teammate, whom she'd only really known for a day due to his absence from the academy for the last several years. This all wouldn't have been so bad if it weren't for the fact that she was now missing her underwear. "I understand." Naruto smiled as he set her down. "Good, as for these." He walked over to the tattered remains of her underwear, and tied them around the ring of the kunai that was still lodged in the tree. "They will stay there as a reminder until you show me that you've taken my words to heart." Ino went a shade of red. Naruto thought unobtainable. She looked like she was about to object until Kurenai spoke up. "While unconventional and somewhat inappropriate, I happen to agree with Naruto in this instance. Now run home and grab a fresh pair of underwear, then hustle back here." Ino bit back a reply and nodded before running off to get a new pair of underwear. "I hope you know what you're doing, Naruto-kun, and you're not just hanging a trophy from a tree." She smirked teasingly at him. "While they are a great trophy, they will be a staunch reminder to her of how easily she was defeated. The goal of removing that humiliation from her environment will help motivate her to become strong enough to take them back. I was thinking of giving her a chance once a week at a little game where she can have them back if she can manage to get past me and take them." Kurenai chuckled. "You know, given the massive head start you have on her, the task will be nearly impossible. I will not make it easy on her, but I will not make the task impossible. I train with gravity seals. When they're released, I can move at low jonin speeds effectively. When giving her this little weekly progress test, I'll keep them turned up enough to limit me to low chunin speeds. When she can match or beat that, she'll be ready to take them back," he said, looking over to Hinata. He'd kept her in his peripherals ever since she'd returned from the wood line. He'd actually been surprised that Kurenai had her change into a sports bra and bike shorts, though he guessed it was to get her comfortable with being uncomfortable. "Good work, Hinata-chan. Keep it up, you're doing great," he called out, causing the girl to go a deep shade of red as she turned away from them and continued, though both veterans noticed the slight increase in her pace as she did despite her obvious fatigue. "You said you use gravity seals, does that mean you know how to make them?" "That's a very advanced skill." Naruto nodded as he continued to watch his teammate traverse around the large pond. "Correct. In this day and age, with the death of my clan and the passing of the Yondaime, there are only a handful of people that possess the level of Fuinjutsu knowledge in this village to create them. These people include the Hokage, Jiraiya of the Sannin, and myself. I know I don't have to tell you how unlikely the idea of one of those two having the time to make gravity seals for the rank and file." Kurenai sighed and nodded. "Can I count on your help to provide some for your teammates? One of the reasons Jiraiya and the Hokage would not have the time to outfit the general forces with these seals is because each seal is specific to the recipient to account for their body structure. Things like height, weight, limb length, torso size and the like need to be taken into account for the seal matrix to work. It also needs to be updated regularly to reflect significant changes in the person's weight and muscle mass changes. In cases like Ino and Hinata who are still growing, it will need to be adjusted to reflect the changes in limb length, and even bust increase, as perverted as it may sound. This is why it can't be mass-produced like explosive tags and storage seals. It's also an intimate process, though I am more than willing to produce these seals for the three of you. However, I will only do it with their informed consent sans coercion. Kurenai nodded, thankful for both his openness about the process and his desire to maintain both girls' right to consent. I understand. Can you tell me the basics of how the seals work? It increases the natural gravity around a person. It helps to spread the increase in weight across the body instead of localizing the strain like ankle weights would. Mine are currently at 5 times gravity, meaning they're a little over 660 pounds. Kurenai's eyes widened. How? One of the few benefits if my condition is an amazing healing factor. Broken limbs heal within a few days, fatigued muscles a matter of hours. This allows me to train myself to the point of collapse every day and be ready to do so again the next day. My kind were made to be the perfect weapons after all, he said, his gaze pointed out at the pond in front of them, though to Kurenai it looked as though he was staring far beyond the crystal blue waters, past the borders of the trees and far beyond where she herself could see. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder and looked down at him, though it wasn't by much as she only stood about an inch taller than his own 5 feet 4 inches. You're not a weapon, Naruto. You and those like you have had an unfair hand dealt to you in life. Burdened from birth with protecting your homes and the world from powers that far exceed any one person, there are those who hold prejudice against you. Up until recently I was counted to an extent. But there are plenty of people like Anko who understand and appreciate the sacrifices you make for this village. Naruto turned his head to her and smiled as he patted the hand on his shoulder. Thank you, Kurenai-chan. Now how about a friendly spar before Ino gets back? Can you actually send a shadow clone to her house to tell her to bring her swimsuit back with her for team bonding after training? Naruto nodded and created a clone to go and inform Ino while Kurenai sent Hinata out to buy one. After a grueling training session, which included a painful spar between Naruto and Kurenai while the other 2 genin were away gathering their swimsuits, which Kurenai still had the painful bruise from thanks to a lucky punch to the ribs courtesy of her sole male student. The group was now sat within the shallow end of the training ground pond, relaxing after an intense initial training session. Kurenai was dressed in a slightly revealing one-piece that was cut high on her hips and plunged down to her belly button. Ino wore a strapless purple bikini that's top twisted in the center of her chest with a small gold ring that held the twisted fabric in place. Hinata's swimsuit was slightly more revealing than what Naruto had expected, though he suspected Kurenai had something to do with it. The swimsuit was a 2-piece with a more conservative top than Ino's, but the bottoms were of a slightly higher cut than he'd expected. That was painful. I've never trained so hard in my life. Ino whined as she leaned back against the edge of the pond. You better get used to it, Ino. This is going to be your life until I think your skills have improved enough to go on higher ranking missions. We'll be doing 1 D-rank mission a day to keep up our mission records until you're ready for a C-rank mission. Now I know you two have your clans to fall back on for financial support. Naruto, what about you? Can your finances support this plan? I have substantial savings from my time as a solo genin. If need be, I've been given permission to forego team sessions during this remedial period for solo missions to keep up my own mission record and financial obligations. Will you? Kurenai asked. Once a week I will take a day for myself to complete D-rank missions. I use my shadow clones so I can deal with a week's worth of D-ranks in a single day. Though I won't be doing so during team missions. Why not? It would make them go by quicker and be so much easier. Ino whined slightly. She'd heard about D-ranks from her older cousins and was not looking forward to them, because for one, it would deprive you of the experience. D-ranks are meant to test and improve your work ethic. 2. I've been doing D-ranks for 4 years. You can live with 1 a week for the next month or so. The faster you improve, the faster you can stop doing them. 3. D-rank missions are a way for you to put the teamwork and other skills you've learned into practice in a safe and controlled environment. Allowing me to use my shadow clones to speed through our missions would deprive you of all of these aspects of your journey as a shinobi. He explained, causing Ino to pout and sink a little more into the water. Very well put, Naruto. Ino, do not try and manipulate your teammates into doing your work for you. I believe you've already experienced happens when you get on Naruto's bad side. And that wasn't even my bad side. Naruto smiled at Ino, causing the other blonde to move her hands to her already sore backside. I withdraw my objections, she said with a bit of panic in her voice. Good, Kurenai said with a smile. Now everyone will bring their swimsuits to team meetings to training every day. After training is over, we'll spend an hour soaking and talking in order to build a better team bond. Is this a normal part of the genin experience, Kurenai-sensei? Hinata asked with a slight nervousness. She'd sat at the deepest part of the pond edge. No, typically teams don't do bonding exercises outside of normal teamwork training. However, I want our team to be as comfortable with each other as possible and to have the best chemistry possible. That's why I want us to have a set time for casual interaction after training. After another hour of small talk and getting to know each other, the team dried off and went their separate ways, with Naruto returning to his altar to complete his nightly sacrifice. 3 weeks had passed. Naruto was happy with the progress his team was making. He'd informed Kurenai that he would forego offering the two of them the seals until they had the stamina and speed to finish 30 laps around the pond in under an hour. She'd agreed, not wanting to throw too much at the girls too quickly if she could help it. Now Naruto was sat in his altar after another intense training session, burning an offering of steak, fruit and wine. He was knelt in front of the burning food when he heard Sekhmet's voice speak in his head. She normally waited to speak to him until he was here unless it was an emergency, as it was easier and took less energy to speak to him in what was considered one of her holy places. Naruto, I have something I want you to look into for me. What is it, goddess? One of your former classmates, a girl named Ami, who I feel will be an excellent potential follower. I remember Ami from our first year. I'd go down to the Broken Kanai. I think you'll find something interesting there. Naruto sighed as he stood up. He truly did love his goddess, but she could be so cryptid sometimes. Though he guessed that had something to do with being a deity in general. Throwing on a set of casual clothing, he decided to follow her instructions and head down to the red light shinobi bar. His heightened senses picked up the smell of booze and stale tobacco smoke before he'd even had a chance to enter the building. He was wondering what his goddess could be planning by sending him to a place like this. Surely, she didn't intend to have him preach to the drunken masses like some sort of messiah. He was unsure what he was supposed to be looking for until his eyes landed on her. Back behind the bar, dressed in a skimpy bikini top and cut-off shorts. What the hell? He muttered under his breath as he took a seat in front of her at the bar. What can I get you? The girl started before she noticed the person in front of her and scowled. What are you doing here, Uzumaki? I could ask you the same thing, Ami. Ami sighed and picked up her order pad. It's slow, order a drink and I'll tell you. Naruto ordered a bottle of sake and poured some into a saucer. So, what's going on? With you coming back to the academy for team placements, I was the odd man out when it came to team placements. I was put in the reserve unit, and told I could only take low-risk D-rank missions until a spot opened up on one of the teams. The number of D-ranks I can take in a month don't quite add up to what I need for rent since my orphan stipend was cut off after I graduated. So I work here in my free time trying to make enough in tips to get by until a spot opens up. I get groped, harassed, and verbally abused by drunk shinobi for a few extra ryo a night. She commiserated as she downed the offered saucer of sake. I have an offer for you then if you're willing to take it. What kind of offer? If it's to be your new live-in girlfriend, I get that offer 3 times a night minimum, and I'm not interested. No, I bought my apartment building about a year ago. It has 4 units. I use the top 2 personally, the third I let my friend Enko stay in. The fourth, however, has been empty for a while. I'm willing to give it to you if you pay the utilities and help me out by cleaning my apartment once a week while you get back on your feet. I don't need pity, Uzumaki, she said with a scowl, as she crossed her arms on her chest. It's not pity, we're both shinobi of this village. We need to look out for each other. This also benefits me. Now that I have team obligations on top of my personal obligations, having someone helping with keeping the apartment tidy would help me out by freeing up time I would be spending doing it myself. Ami sighed. My shift ends in 10 minutes. Settle your tab and we can go look at the apartment together. Naruto nodded and placed a 1,000 ryo bill on the table. Keep the change, he said with a smile as he downed the remainder of the bottle. Ami closed him out, and informed the manager that she was clocking out for the night before following him up the street to his complex. When they walked in, she noticed a thick layer of dust all over the apartment. Well, it's definitely bigger than the shoe closet I call an apartment now. Definitely needs a woman's touch though. You said rent is free as long as I clean for you? Yes, for as long as you'd like. Do I get a bonus based on my uniform? She asked, gesturing to her style of dress. I'd like to have some extra cash to pay a tune-in for some extra training tips while I wait for the next cycle of academy students to graduate. Naruto chuckled and rubbed her head. Fine, I'll slip you a bit more money the less clothing you wear, he said in a half-joking manner. Deal, she said with a smirk, crossing her arms, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow for a moment. Don't look too surprised. I already get paid to dress like a slut, dressing a bit more like one for an audience of one, who also happens to at least seem halfway like a gentleman. Halfway, better than I was expecting. He laughed, patting her shoulder lightly. We'll start tomorrow, and your neighbor may be open to giving you a few tips on her days off if you bribe her with dango, though you can ask her about it yourself at Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner? She asked in confusion. I thought I was an employee. You also live here, and in this household, bearing being on missions, everyone takes the time to come together on Sunday evening, eat dinner and bond over the fact that we are all each other has. Now follow me, I want to show you something, he said as he walked to the back of the apartment and opened a door leading to a stairwell. He turned on the light and led her down the staircase. They walked for what seemed like several minutes before finally reaching a large metal door at the bottom. What is this place? This is Bravo Bunker, he said as he opened the door to a command center, with a large meeting table and several chairs surrounding it. What is Bravo Bunker? She asked as she looked around. It is where we go when everywhere else is compromised, he said, placing his hand on the large Uzumaki crest on the table that sat next to the Namikaze crest on the opposite side of the table. It was built by the Uzumaki in the wake of the IWA's suicide bombing during the Third Shinobi World War. The bombing in question had been in the Commerce District during the beginning of the day, and had killed almost 300 civilians. It was meant for Uzumaki to be able to plan a counter-offensive alongside other clan heads in the wake of a similar attack. Wow, I never knew a place like this existed. Only a handful of people in this village know about it, and now you are one of them, he said as he looked at the painting of the village that sat over the table. Why trust me with this? It is likely you would have found it at some point while cleaning. On top of that, you are now part of this household and under my protection, therefore you have a right to know about this safety contingency. So what do we do now? Ami asked. Now I'll show you the kitchen, showers, and living quarters. While you say a prayer, that we never have to use them, he said as he walked down the hall, after getting Ami settled in and getting Anko up to speed on her. With Anko saying that she would in fact help the girl as much as she could during her off time in exchange for the same cleaning service Naruto received. Naruto went back to his apartment and took a long shower to relax himself from the eventful and stressful day before heading to bed for the evening. The following morning, Naruto took Ami to the market to pick up cleaning supplies for the complex and informed her of Anko's offer before coming back and beginning his morning studies as Ami went about cleaning the apartment for the first time. So, once a week or more? Ami asked as she began mopping the area around the table he was using to begin his studies on level 6 Fuinjutsu alongside 3 clones. Once a week will satisfy your rent. However, if you want to clean twice a week, I'll give you 5,000 Ryo if you want a little extra pocket money. I'll also look into bringing you into the field with my squad and I when we start taking C ranks for the experience, though it might depend on if we can justify the additional manpower. Though Anko-chan might be willing to take you on C-rank extermination missions once your skills meet her satisfaction. Is there anything I can do to help with that? For now, continue training. I'll give you my old training scrolls on the tree walking and water walking techniques. Once you've completed those two and increased your reserves, you can start on elemental manipulation. Use the reservist training ground. Come back to me when you can do 30 laps around the training ground pond in under an hour. I will create some gravity seals for you to help you increase your speed and stamina to chunin levels. Ami smiled and nodded. You're doing a lot for me. Why? We barely knew each other a few months before you graduated. Simple, you're a comrade. Ami walked forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. Don't do that to me, Naruto. Don't insult my intelligence by lying to me. Naruto sighed and stood from his seat at the table. He instructed the clones to continue their work, as he motioned Ami to follow him. The two walked to a side door with a padlock on it. I thought you said I wasn't allowed to go in this room. You want to know why? Then I'll have to let you in on a sensitive topic that I trust you to keep quiet about. I also hope that the knowledge that the third in command of the torture and interrogation department is your neighbor and my right hand and will hunt you down if you betray me. Ami gulped as the severity of the situation finally sank in. Yes, sir, she said, subconsciously referring to him as her superior, though it didn't dawn on her in the moment. Naruto unlocked the door and released the security seal on it, before entering and motioning Ami to do the same. Ami was stunned to say the least as what she saw. The inside of the apartment was nothing like she had expected. All but the bathroom had been converted into one large room. The floors were made of fine marble, with columns of the same material from floor to ceiling. The trim of both the floor and ceiling was lined with a ring of gold around it. In the center of the room was a large brazier with a chimney placed above it. In front of the brazier were several mats that looked to be worn a bit as if someone had been kneeling on them. This is my temple to my goddess Sekhmet, Naruto explained as he stepped in front of the brazier, his hands clasped behind his back. Sekhmet? I've never heard of her before, Ami said in confusion. She's a goddess from the old world, before the shinobi world, before the Sage of Six Paths and before chakra existed in this world, he said as he looked at the small flame resting in the bottom of the brazier. Our world was born from the ashes of the old world. Due to their isolation on a small island, the worshippers of the gods that rule this world now were mostly spared the disaster that fell upon the old world. When the gods moved the continents and created the map we know now, including the forbidden lands beyond Kaze, the people of that island spread out and became the dominant religion in the world. Over the generations they became more and more prevalent until they became the dominant religion on the planet. The lack of worshippers caused the other old gods to lose power until they eventually gave up on a revival and faded from this world. Sekhmet managed by focusing on a small following until recent years, but that following is slowly dying out. The members that are still around are afraid of having children with those outside the sect out of fear of prosecution, especially in the wake of the Jashin sect massacre 30 years ago. If it were to be found out that I was a worshipper of a god not connected to Kami, then I would likely be ousted from this village. What are your plans? Ami asked as she looked at the mural of Sekhmet behind the brazier. The Shinto gods have gotten complacent. With the other gods long since faded from this world, there is no longer anyone left to oppose them. In the old world, even the most dominant of pantheons had to continue to provide guidance and assistance to their followers to keep them from seeking other gods to fulfill their needs. With those gods faded from this world, there is no more competition, no reason to continue striving if there is no one to oppose you. You're planning for a revival of the Sekhmet sect, aren't you? Won't that bring the attention of the Shinto gods down on you? Ami asked in slight concern. Gods cannot interfere directly, they would have to send their followers after me, and they won't issue that order until we become public and have many followers. To do so would be to acknowledge a god outside of their pantheon still exists. Even Jashin was a member of their pantheon until she attempted to strike out on her own and attempted to start her own pantheon. Hence why she began giving her champions and priests the gift of immortality in exchange for the sacrifice of those she regards as heathens, the followers of Kami. Ami remarked in realization. Yes, in an attempt to show Kami and her sect as weak. However, true immortality is reserved for gods, so she had to give them a weakness. If they can't sacrifice at least once a week, they lose their immortality. So, their heads were cut off and left in jars until their immortality wore off. To my knowledge, only one member of the sect remains, an S-rank missing ninja named Haiden. Like me, he is the last priest of his goddess. Why would they wait until the problem grows? Many are disheartened with the Shinto pantheon's lack of intervention in this world. To acknowledge the existence of another goddess would cause people to question their rule. Ami thought for a moment. She had been a good girl, had said her prayers at night in the orphanage just like everyone else, and not once did she ever hear the gods respond to her. Not once did she ever feel that she was even given the tools to answer her own prayers. She'd been faithful, and her reward was to be forced to bartend at the ripe old age of 13 for perverts who drank too much. I'm not saying I'm willing to convert, but I'd like to learn more about her. I'll give you a few of the text I've transcribed for her to study on your own time, and I will give you all the time you need to come to your decision. I personally believe that a decision of faith should be made of one's own volition and not due to pressure or persuasion. Ami looked up at him with hope in her eyes. After graduation, even her former friends had left her behind after being recycled to the academy after failing their secondary examination. She'd been abandoned by everyone, and she was clinging to the small light of hope that she saw in front of her that he wouldn't abandon her too. So, even if I don't decide to convert, I won't lose my spot here? I won't lose my job working for you. Naruto could see her shaking slightly, and could tell she was worried her livelihood was at stake. He took her hand and turned her to face him as he looked down into her eyes. As long as you are good to me, as long as you respect this household and look out for the people who live in it, you will always have a place here, no matter what your beliefs. All I ask is that you not let those beliefs skew your views of anyone else whether you convert or not. Ami smiled and threw her arms around him, burying her head in his chest. Thank you, she said through choked-back tears. Naruto curled his fingers gently around the back of her head and wrapped the other arm around the small of her back, pulling her in measuredly. I've got you, you're safe here, you're welcome here, and you're loved here. He whispered to her, as he softly rubbed the back of her head. The following morning brought Naruto back to the training grounds as he watched Hinata and Ino run laps around the pond. He stood next to Kurenai and looked over at her. How much are they up to? We both know you've been keeping just as close an eye on them as me. So you know they're both up to 1.5 times gravity. Naruto gave her a teasing smirk. It's better if I ask you than if I were to admit to constantly staring at my two admittedly beautiful female teammates. So, there are a few hormones rattling around in that training-crazed mind of yours. She giggled slightly as she leaned back to stretch. Enough to realize you haven't worn a bra since our first training session. He shot back, causing her to blush. I also know you've gone up to 2 times gravity on your own seals. Kurenai smiled. Nowhere near yours. I read your progress report. You're up to 6 times gravity on your own seals. Do you think they'll be ready soon? Hinata is coming along in her alternative gentle fist style. Thank you for that, by the way. Kurenai smiled. It was my pleasure, he replied, remembering how Sekhmet had designed a form of the gentle fist that worked better with Hinata's flexible and athletic build. Ino is coming along with her own taijutsu style, as well as working on her elemental ninjutsu. Her family's ninjutsu only really works when the target is already immobilized, so we've been focusing on ways for her to immobilize her opponents. What's her affinity? Water, same as Hinata's. I haven't gotten a chance to ask you what yours is. You've never used any elemental jutsu during our spars. My main affinity is for wind, but I also have minor affinities for water, earth, and fire. Kurenai's eyes widened as she looked over at him. You have affinities for 4 out of the 5 elements? I suspect the fire affinity comes from my condition, he said as he began his own stretching. Though he knew the earth affinity and the boost to his wind affinity came from his being the champion of Sekhmet. Due to her origins in the desert, and the changes and evolutions she'd gone through throughout the years, a benefit of her worship was an increase in earth and wind affinities to her followers. Still, 3 natural affinities is something amazing. Have you been training them? Mainly my wind affinity. I use chakra flow to sharpen my blade with wind chakra. Though I do know a few offensive and defensive water and earth jutsu, such as the water wall, earth wall, water bullet, and tearing earth palm jutsus. I also know the great breakthrough, psycho wind jutsu, and wind bullet jutsu. I haven't training in fire jutsu though. However, considering that both my teammates have water affinities, and you specialize in genjutsu, we need a ninjutsu specialist on the team. Kurenai smiled. Don't push yourself too hard, Naruto-kun. We rely on you, yes, but you shouldn't be solely responsible for this team's safety. I'll try to remember that. Now quit stalling. It's time for your daily ass-kicking. He smiled as he took his stance. You're just lucky you're immune to my genjutsu. Kurenai smirked as she deactivated her gravity seals and took her stance. Naruto grinned and darted directly at her, throwing a quick jab at her gut. Instinct allowed her to jump back slightly to avoid the punch. Hey! I didn't say start, she shouted as she began dodging punches and kicks from her student. Is a Jonin really going to complain about someone using dirty tactics to get the edge in a fight? He smirked, throwing a kick to her ribs that sent her skidding to her left from the impact. Kurenai smirked playfully as she clutched her now throbbing ribs. Why do you insist on making those sore every time? It's not my fault you're so eager to let me so deep into your guts. He smirked as he activated his water whip technique and swatted her across the chest. The tip of the whip caught her left nipple as it slashed across her chest. Kurenai let out an uncharacteristically girlish scream as she fell back. You didn't say you knew the water whip. Deception is Shinobi's greatest weapon, Nai-chan. Why would I let the person I spar with the most in on all my tricks? He goaded her using her casual nickname to rile her up. Kurenai growled slightly as she launched herself at him to re-engage in taijutsu. She knew it was bait, but he knew how to push her buttons. She launched a kick towards his head only for him to duck underneath and deliver a punch to the femoral nerve behind her knee. Kurenai let out a yelp as she felt her leg go numb from the sudden impact on her nerve. For a street brawler, you're painfully accurate when it comes to striking nerves. A woman's body is a work of art that should be appreciated for each curve and reactive area, he said as he used a sealless substitution to switch with a shadow clone behind her, as he cracked another water whip across her ass, causing her to yelp and grab for her ass. Before Kurenai had time to react, she found herself surrounded by 4 Naruto clones who'd each wrapped a water whip around her limbs. The original stood in front of her and grabbed her nose, pinching harshly. Ow, ow, ow! She cried out as she struggled to free her nose from his impressively strong grip. Surrender and I'll let go, he said simply as he began leading her head around by the nose. Fine, I surrender. Just let go of my nose. Naruto smiled and released her nose, before planting a small kiss on it. Good spar, Nai-chan, he said as the clones released their whips. Good spar, my ass. I didn't land a single hit, she said, one hand rubbing her sore nose, as the other rubbed her reddened backside through her dress. I'm your perfect counter, Nai-chan. Outside of the Sharingan there really isn't any genjutsu that can really affect me. This is good though, because it forces you, a genjutsu specialist, to train to fight against someone who can counter and defend against your genjutsu. I know. She sighed as she took a drink from her water bottle. You know I'm supposed to be the lecture-giving sensei here, not you. Well, as the only one on this team who can consistently kick your ass, I'm the only one qualified to keep your ego in check. He smirked at her. I do not have an ego, she said with a slight pout. Please, did you forget about the relationship between me and Anko? I know all about the reputation you Hana and Yugao have as the ice queens of Konoha, placing yourselves up on a pedestal where you look down and judge men based on your opinion of what you think is perverted behavior. Kurenai's face went bright red. She wanted to dispute his claims, but the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't help but agree with him. Out of their friend group of eligible kunoichi, Anko was the only one who didn't participate in their generalized male-bashing sessions, though the other members of the group suspected that it was due in part to her close relationship to the Uzumaki standing in front of her. After spending the past several weeks in the company of said blonde, and seeing her own opinions on the general male population beginning to sway more towards a moderate stance, Kurenai seemed to believe the correlation more than her and her friends previously thought. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, you're right. Come on, let's go get the other two from their tree climbing exercises. It's about time for our post-training session soak. Naruto smiled softly and nodded as he leaned down and grabbed his bag. I'll head into the tree line and get changed then. Another month came and went with Naruto's team continuing their intense training regimen. They'd even been joined on a couple of occasions by Ami, who would fill in for Naruto during training whenever he and Anko would go out for what they called their special bonding time, which mainly consisted of taking extermination missions to track down slavers and bandits around the country. The part the two kept under wraps was that they were secretly smuggling the orphans and those who wished to leave the country to an old Uzumaki safe house in southeastern Fire Country, where they'd stay until the two could find a place for them to go. Naruto was highly considering using them to restart Uzushio in secret, but would not only need the funds to bankroll the initial move and building materials, but the time to lead them through Uzushio's barriers and onto the main island, though now Naruto was standing alongside Kurenai and his fellow genin as they waited in the mission room to be assigned the team's first official C-rank mission. Kurenai, you can't be serious, Iruka shouted indignantly. They've only been genin for 2 months. I've been a genin for more than 4 years, Iruka, and I've been killing in the name of this village just as long. Naruto said dismissively as he flipped through one of his few injutsu books casually. Iruka scowled at the notion. This was a time of peace. These kids shouldn't be killing at this age. Both of my teammates have been trained to move at and fight at least low chunin speeds. Naruto spoke. Besides Iruka, it's no longer your decision, it's hers. He said, nodding his head towards Kurenai. He's right, Yumino. Kurenai spoke. And I believe they're ready for a C-rank mission. Alright, settle down you three. Iruka, Naruto-kun is right, it's up to Kurenai whether or not she believes her team is ready for a C-rank mission. Which it sounds like she believes they are? Hiruzen asked, looking over at Kurenai, who nodded in response. Good, then send in Tenzuna. The door opened and an old drunk man walked into the room, a jug of sake swaying from a rope in front of him. I've got some stupid Playboy blonde, and 3 sluts. I thought I was paying for shinobi, he said indignantly as he went to take a swig from the jug, only for the container to explode into dozens of pieces of shrapnel. Tenzuna's eyes widened as he was lifted off his feet by the neck. You will not insult the female shinobi of this village. You will refrain from drinking during the remainder of this mission. You will follow the orders of myself and Jonin Yuhi to the letter. My job is to get you to your destination. The condition in which I deliver you to said destination is up to my discretion, so I would suggest keeping on the good side of my discretion. He spoke coldly as he looked at the man. Understood. Tenzuna said, shaking slightly. Good, then we'll meet you in the morning, he said with a smile as he set him down on the floor. Tenzuna nodded frantically and ran off to his hotel room. After finishing with his meeting in the Hokage Tower, Naruto returned home to tend to his altar, where he was slightly surprised to run into Ami within the temple area of the complex, as she had just cleaned the area the previous day. What also surprised him was her manner of dress. She was wearing a short V-neck dress that was accented by gold trims that arced upwards just below her ribs and belly button. Below them was a gold-colored sash that held a red cloth in place between her legs. Ami, looking to earn some extra pocket money by tending the altar while I was out? He asked, looking into her chestnut eyes. No, boss, I've decided to convert, so I took some inspiration from the descriptions of dresses in the books you lent me, she explained, her raised heel sandals clicking slightly against the marble floor as she made her way towards him. I came in here to burn a small offering and ask Sekhmet for guidance. Well then, I believe I've walked in here for a reason. I'll be leaving on a mission for the next few weeks. I need you to take care of my offerings while I'm gone. I'll leave money available for them in the apartment. Enko says you'll be ready to start taking on small-scale C-ranks with her soon, but I'll leave some extra pocket money lying around just in case. Ami giggled slightly as she looked up at him and straightened out the small wrinkles in his clothes with the palms of her hands. The way you're talking, it almost sounds like I'm your wife, she said, looking up at him with a teasing smile. And you're my sweet husband, worrying about making sure I'm taken care of before you go away on a business trip. Naruto smiled. Well, if that's the case, maybe I should do the husbandly thing and bring you home a souvenir, then take you on a date when I get home. Ami's face went slightly flush at the idea, mainly due to the fact that she'd found herself reevaluating her feelings for the blonde over the past couple of days. Deciding it would be worth it to go for her chance at happiness, she looked up at him and smiled, cupping his cheek. I'd like that. Naruto was a bit shocked, as he'd mostly been teasing, though he would be lying to himself if he said he didn't find her beautiful or that he didn't enjoy her company. I'd like that too, he said as he leaned in and planted a kiss on her forehead, to which Ami smiled and leaned her head against his chest. That night, as Naruto laid in bed, the voice of his goddess spoke softly in his head. My champion and my first priestess of the new generation, truly a love story meant to be written in the stars, she purred teasingly. Yeah, but it's nothing compared to the love story between the champion and his goddess. Naruto bit back teasingly. Perverted champion. She blushed as she manifested her astral form in the room. I want you to keep your eyes out on this mission. There may be an opportunity to advance our goals when you get to Nami. I will, goddess, and don't worry, I'll be back to keep worshipping you soon enough, he said, as he slowly drifted off to sleep. The astral projection of Sekhmet turned and looked out the window at the full moon that sat high in the sky. I know you were my champion. I just hope you're ready for the war you'll be bringing upon yourself. So, Naruto, how's it going shacking up with the washout? You getting tired of playing sugar daddy for her yet? Or are you going to continue making us deal with her while you pal around with Anko? Ino asked as the group waited at the gates of the village for their client to arrive. Ino-chan. Naruto said, giving her an eerie smile. I know that you and Sakura had an adversarial relationship with each other when you were younger. However, I've already spoken to you regarding your disrespectful behavior towards fellow Konoha shinobi. If you've forgotten, I'd be more than happy to go over the lesson again, though I'm sure your lingerie budget will likely suffer for it. Ino quickly sat up a bit straighter and shook her head. No need for that, I'll behave. Good. He looked over to Kurenai. I'd like Anko and Ami to be our designated backup on C-rank missions that meet the criteria to call for it. Kurenai nodded in agreement. A great way to get her experience in the field while she waits for the next graduating class, or an opening on another team. I'm glad you agree. Since this is going to be the case, I'd like to invite the three of you to join the three of us for one of our weekly Sunday dinners when we return from this mission. Sunday dinners? Ino asked curiously. Do the three of you always have dinner together on Sunday every week? Hinata asked. Over the past couple of months, she'd become much more comfortable around Naruto and a bit more confident in asserting her opinion. It's a tradition in our house. Every Sunday, barring exemptions for a person who is out on a mission like I am now, the three of us have dinner together as a set time to bond with each other and catch up on the week's events. Having the three of you join us for at least one of them could have the same effect as our post-training soaking sessions. I think it's a wonderful idea, Naruto-kun, Kurenai said as she watched the bridge builder approach them. Alright everyone, game faces on. After about an hour of walking, with Ino questioning the bridge builder about the goings-on in his country, Naruto noticed something odd on the road. It hasn't rained in weeks. Did they really think that would work, he thought. Wadding up a small piece of paper, he dropped it near the puddle and continued walking. As the genjutsu was being released, the paper exploded in a flash of blinding white light. The two enemy shinobi cried out in pain as they attempted to cover their eyes. Their reward for doing so was having paralysis seals slapped onto their backs courtesy of Naruto. Now this is where the fun begins, he said with a sadistic smirk. You really need to spend less time with Anko. Kurenai deadpanned. I'll be sure to tell her you said that. Actually, never mind. Tanzuna, you may want to stand behind that tree with Kurenai, Naruto informed the bridge builder. I'm going to teach my teammates one of the more unsavory aspects of shinobi life. Tanzuna didn't know what the boy meant, but given the look on his face he knew he didn't want to find out. So, he followed the Jonin woman behind the tree where she activated a privacy seal to spare the man's ears what was about to happen. Naruto for his part activated a barrier around the five of them on the road that would allow light in but wouldn't allow it to escape, thus not allowing anyone to see what was happening inside of it. Alright you two, we're going to have a little fun while I teach my teammates a thing or two about information gathering, he said casually as he unsealed two camping stools for the girls to sit on, and a pair of buckets for when the girls inevitably puked from the experience. You won't get shit out of us. We're from the Bloody Mist. No wannabe greenhorn genin is going to get anything out of us. Goza shouted. Naruto, I can just use my family techniques to get the answers out of them. Ino almost pleaded to avoid the sight of physical torture. You're not trained enough. These two are former Chunin of Kirigakure. They've been trained to put up mental blocks in order to avoid giving out information, he said as he removed their clothing. Alright boys, enough wasting time. Let's get down to business. He smiled, pulling out a small bag. He opened it, removing a vial and two small syringes. This is my own special cocktail of drugs that induce what's called hyperesthesia, he said as he and a shadow clone filled the syringes. Isn't that cute? The baby boy learned a grown-up word. Meizu laughed. You get that bluff out of the textbook? I'm sure that's just saline. Well, why don't you tell me? He smiled, stabbing the needle into the man's urethra. Meizu screamed in agony. He couldn't even writhe around due to the paralysis seal on him. You fucking brat. When I get out of this, I'll rip your fucking balls off and shove them in your mouth. I'll cut off your limbs and make you watch as I fuck each of your teammates before I sell them off when we're done with them. I'm sure that Hyuga girl will make us a good chunk of change. Hinata shrunk into her seat, as her knuckles turned white from gripping the edges of it. Naruto noticed this and placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing it reassuringly. He then turned to the shinobi he was torturing and smirked. You just gave me the first piece. What do you mean, brat? I haven't given you shit! He shouted as he felt the drugs work their way into his system. You said you were going to sell my teammates into slavery. I know all about you two from my bingo book. What do you know about the bingo book, brat? Goza asked. I've collected a few bounties from it in the 4 years I've been on the job. Naruto replied, stabbing the second needle into Goza's inner thigh. As for the piece you gave me, neither of you have any known affiliation with slave traffickers. That tells me whoever hired you has the means and connections to facilitate the sale and transport of high-value slaves, he said as a Simban found its way into Meizu's left testicle, causing him to cry out in pain. Now tell me before I take the other one from him, he said, brandishing another needle. Just you wait until Zabuza hears what you've done. Meizu screamed before the second Saban skewered through the right testicle and into the left one. So, you two are still palling around with Zabuza Momochi. Whoever hired you two must have deep pockets if he's also hired him. However, I don't think I'll be needing you two anymore, he said, unsealing his khopesh. What do you mean? We didn't tell you anything. Gozu shouted before his and his brother's heads found themselves severed from their necks with a fire-enhanced swing from the sacred blade. The fire chakra cauterized the wounds as soon as they were made, avoiding any messy blood spatter. He then sealed the bodies and heads into a scroll before putting it back into his bag and releasing the barrier. He turned just in time to see both Hinata and Ino grab the buckets in front of them and began unloading their breakfast inside of them. Kurenai, you can come out. Naruto called into the treeline. Kurenai Lee Tanzuna out of the trees looked at Naruto. Where are they? Dead, and in storage scrolls. Now would you please go and comfort my teammates while I have a word with our client? He said with a sickly sweet smile. Kurenai nodded and walked off to tend to her female students. Now Tanzuna, why don't you tell me what this mission is really about, or do you need to be my next interrogation? Because right now I've got probable cause to have you charged with falsifying a mission request and willingly endangering the lives of my village's shinobi by falsifying information on a legal document. Unless you tell me what's going on right now, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. Do you understand me? Tanzuna nodded vigorously before he began to explain the situation in Nami. Please, I know I lied, but please don't make my people suffer for my mistake. Naruto looked over at Kurenai. I'd like to continue this mission. Kurenai shook her head. Naruto-kun, neither Ino nor Hinata are ready for something like this. An extermination mission involving bandits maybe. But Zabuza is a jonin, and he likely won't be the only person Gato has hired. I know, which is why you won't be coming with me, Naruto said as his shadow clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Genin Uzumaki, you are not going into enemy territory against a confirmed Jonin-level threat on your own, Kurenai shouted. I'm not. I've sent my clone back to the village and I've ordered him to request an increase in the mission rank to A rank. I'll be giving a personal loan to the country for the difference, and Enko should be dispatched shortly with a suitable backup. Until my return, Ami will be taking my place on your team as a substitute, he explained as he began returning his equipment to his bag. Naruto, you can't call an audible in the field like this. You don't have the authority to do so, she shouted, trying desperately to keep her student out of harm's way. She'd seen too many die during the last war due to being sent into situations they didn't have the training for. No, but I have an obligation to report all changes to mission parameters to the Hokage, and I have the right to suggest alternative action in the event these parameters change. I have a feeling that he will agree with my recommendation, he said, having stalled long enough for his clone to make several long-distance shunshin back to the village to inform the Hokage. My clone just popped. By order of the Hokage, all members of Team 8 except for myself are to report back to Konoha effective immediately, Naruto said in a commanding tone. Kurenai scowled. She hated the idea of having to leave one of her team behind, but she also couldn't ignore an order from the Hokage. Walking up to him, she wrapped her arms around him and pulled him into her. You better come back so I can yell at you some more, she whispered as she choked back tears. I promise, Nai-chan, he whispered as he held her reassuringly. I promise that you will have many more years to yell at me. Now I need you to be strong for them. Kurenai nodded and stepped back before turning to her other two genin. Alright, you two, we're heading back to the village. Neither girl looked happy about the decision, but both nodded and followed their sensei, but not before throwing a worried look to their teammate. Naruto sat with Tenzuna, speaking to him about the situation in his village for 2 hours before his ears perked up. "They're here," he said as he stood up. Tenzuna turned his head in the same direction as Naruto in time to see 3 women drop from the trees. "I can't leave you alone for a minute, can I, Blondie?" Anko asked as she walked towards him, "Like you'd ever want to." Naruto smiled. "Introductions? Yugao Yuzuki, Special Elite Jonin," Anko said, gesturing to the other purple-haired woman. She'd informed Naruto during their years training together that the term was used to inform friendly shinobi of plainclothes Zanbu without informing clients or others who may be listening of the situation. "Hana Inuzuka, Chunin and medic. She'll be coming with us to both act as our field medic and provide relief efforts to the village after we eliminate Gato." Tenzuna's eyes widened. "You're going to take out Gato?" "Yes, the upgraded mission I requested was for the assassination of Gato himself. The bridge's construction will mean nothing if we don't cut off the head of the serpent before it's completed. Once we leave, he'll simply hire someone else to destroy the bridge, and you can't afford the long-term mission to have Konoha shinobi garrisoned at the bridge to protect it. Therefore, we're going to kill Gato and be done with it. Once a new daimyo is put into office, we'll consider an alliance to offer continued protection." "Thank you, my boy," Tenzuna said, taking Naruto's hands in his. "How can I ever thank you? Finish this bridge." It took another day to enter Nami. The group took a small vessel under the bridge before walking down one of the forested trails towards Tenzuna's house. Naruto's senses were on high alert, and his kopech was strapped to his hip as he took point, with Hana and her dogs taking up the rear. Though the island mist was making it difficult for the 3 hounds to pick up a scent, Naruto's ears twitched as he felt a shift in the air pressure. "Everyone get down!" he shouted as he threw Tenzuna and Anko to the floor and pulled his sword from his belt. He raised it just in time to parry the spinning blade with a wind-enhanced strike that caused it to veer off course into a nearby tree. The large Zanbato found itself embedded in the trunk with a large chunk of steel missing from the blade. "Not many can block a strike from my blade, boy," a gruff voice said before Zabuza appeared on top of the blade. "Then I guess that earns me a chance to complete the set. I've already collected the heads of your 2 goons, now I'm going to take yours," Naruto said, releasing a wave of killing intent to combat the one Zabuza was leveling at him. "Not bad, kid, let's do this then," Zabuza said as he pulled his blade from the tree trunk and cut his own hand with it. As his blood flowed down the blade, the crack made by Naruto's sword began to disappear. "Interesting trick, Momochi. How's it work?" he asked, trying to stall for a moment as he sent subtle hand signs to Yugao behind his back. He was thankful Anko had taught him the Jonin hand signs. Each of the 7 swords of the mist possess a unique ability. My blade possesses the ability to repair itself using the iron it devours from the blood of those it cuts. Then that means I just need to take you out without getting cut, he said as he took a step out onto the water and held his sword in front of his face, turning the blade to face Zabuza. Zabuza was intrigued by the exotic blade, but more so by the fact that this boy seemed to know the customs of a duel between swordsmen. "All right, kid, we'll do this the old way," Zabuza said, mimicking the gesture. Naruto pulled a kunai from his pouch and showed it to Zabuza before throwing it in the air. Both men watched, and the moment the tip of the blade connected with the water, both of them took off towards each other. The 3 women along with Tenzuna watched for a moment, before Yugao created a shadow clone and slipped away to deal with Naruto's suspicions. The older shinobi were in awe, not only of Naruto's speed, though Anko knew without his gravity seals Naruto could move at mid to high Jonin speeds. She was more so impressed by the skill in which he utilized his blade. She knew he received training and instruction in its use from their goddess, but she rarely got to see him go all out with it. Naruto swung for Zabuza's legs. Despite the man's skill, the blade was still extremely large and not great for defending against strikes to the lower half of his body. Zabuza blocked by spinning the blade and jumping back, though he was surprised how the boy's blade managed to chip away at his own without the use of chakra flow. "You're not bad, kid," Zabuza said as they locked blades with each other. "It's an honor to test myself against you, Momochi," Naruto replied as he broke the lock and moved around to Zabuza's back before taking a swipe at him. Zabuza dove forward in response, and took a back swing at the blonde, using his blade's length to his advantage. Naruto jumped onto the blade, and used it as a springboard to launch himself towards Zabuza. He managed to take a swipe at the larger man's neck and take a small chunk out of his trap before he was forced to back off when the man took a swipe at his legs, though the man had managed to nick his calf, which allowed the sword to repair a few of the chips it had received during their exchange. Naruto used the momentum of his jump to spin and take a swipe at Zabuza's shoulder, severing the tendon, causing his left arm to go limp. "Alright kid, I've seen all I need to," Zabuza said as he jumped back and stopped. Naruto was confused for a moment, before noticing that everyone aside from himself, Zabuza and Anko, were frozen in place. "You're one of us? My charge Hakayuki and I are both followers. I converted during the last war on a mission in Kaze. A sandstorm forced me to take cover in a cave. I fell through the floor and found myself at the ruins of a temple of the goddess. I've been following her in secret ever since. She informed me that you would be coming to Wave soon, which is why I joined with Gato. I was tasked with testing your current abilities in order to put the goddess's mind at ease, considering what she knows you're planning to do. Does that mean you're going to help me take out Gato?" "Yes, Haku and I will retreat for now. Meet us at the north edge of the forest tomorrow night, closest to the compound on the top of the hill outside the city. We'll deal with Gato then." Naruto nodded and removed a stack of explosive tags from his bag, handing it to Zabuza. "These are low grade, not strong enough to take out the compound itself, but still large enough to kill the thugs he's got staying in the barracks." Zabuza nodded and grabbed Haku before disappearing in a swirl of water as the illusion faded. "Where did they go?" Yugao asked. "Zabuza has agreed to work as our confidential informant within Gato's compound in exchange for asylum from the new regime that's instated after the assassination of Gato. Can he be trusted?" Yugao asked in suspicion. "For now, yes. I'll send a shadow clone to meet with him at the edge and then substitute with it once I'm certain it's not a trap," he said, not yet comfortable enough with the two other members of his team to reveal his connection to Sekhmet. "Alright, I'll trust you for now, because you managed to track down his accomplice. However, if I feel the team is in danger, I'll pull the plug." Naruto nodded. "Then I say we get out of this killing field and head towards Tanzuna's house," he said, causing the other three to nod, and turned to Tanzuna to lead them back to his home. "Do you really think you can take him out?" Tanzuna's daughter Tsunami asked as Naruto helped her with preparing dinner from some of the rations he'd brought with him. "Yes, this will end, but before it does, a lot more people have to die," Naruto said as he continued slicing vegetables. "Someone your age shouldn't have the callousness to speak so casually about killing people," Tsunami said somberly as she poured the vegetables into the stew. "I know you feel that way, and you've seen a glimpse of the world we live in these past 5 years. However, you and I live in two separate worlds. My world of darkness and bloodshed exists in an attempt to make the world you live in a little brighter." Tsunami placed a hand on her shoulder. "I appreciate what you're doing. I just wish I could do something to lighten your load." Naruto smiled and cupped his hand. "Continue to be the shining light I know you are. In a world of darkness, a light like yours is precious. Its shine penetrates the darkness to the point it reaches even those of us who live within its deepest depths." Tsunami's cheeks flushed slightly as she turned her hand over and squeezed it slightly. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. I'll be putting my faith in you, and I hope you'll be able to put your faith in me in return." "I will, Tsunami-chan, trust me." He smiled, kissing the back of her hand. The following midnight, Naruto and his team, save for Hana who had been left behind to guard Tsunami, made their way to the edge of the forest to meet with Zabuza and Haku. "Everything is in place," Zabuza said. "As soon as you flip the switch, the tags will go off, and we can walk in the front door." "Alright, let's do it," Naruto said as he held up a half-ram sign and activated the explosive tags. Screams filled the air as explosions rang through the night. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air as Naruto and his team charged forward into the compound. "Yugao, you're the lead. What's your call?" "You go with Zabuza and take out Gato. Haku will lead us to where they're holding their slaves," Yugao ordered. "Copy that. Let's go, Zabuza." "Got it, brat," he said, not mentioning Naruto's status as champion. Naruto followed through the compound as they both slashed through the remaining guards who hadn't been in the barracks when the explosions went off. "He's through this door," Zabuza said as they approached a large pair of decorative doors that lead to the former daimyo's throne room. Hard and loud, Naruto said as he moved to the left door while Zabuza took the right door. Zabuza nodded as the two of them kicked in the doors and entered the room. The two former samurai guarding Gato attempted to draw their blades only for their necks to be plugged by a set of kunai thrown by the two intruding shinobi. Zabuza, what is the meaning of this? Time stopped as Naruto's kunai made contact with Gato's throat. He looked back half expecting it to be Sekhmet again. Only he noticed that Zabuza was frozen as well. Behind Gato's desk now stood a woman. She was tall, roughly 5 feet 10 inches with pale purple skin and dark violet hair. Her voluptuous figure was bound loosely in a translucent dress that almost gave the appearance of smoke billowing around her body. Her purple hair was held out of her angelic face by a golden headpiece with glowing gem-like accents. "Hello, little heretic," she said in a regal voice that was a mix of both demonic and angelic. "I am Yami. I was wondering how long it would be before Kami sent someone to speak with me. Only 14 years and counting now. I appreciate your plight, young Uzumaki. I will be honest with you. It was against my wishes that silence was enforced with yourself." Yami spoke as she sat in the seat behind Gato's desk. The desk fell to pieces and moved to the chair, molding into it as it turned into a throne. "Then why?" Naruto asked in resentment. "Kami's orders. She finds the practice of Jinchuriki to be a heresy. She feels that it is humans playing God. Therefore, she has ordered us to turn our backs on the Jinchuriki for their part. So Kami turns her back on those of us who had no say in the matter, instead of punishing those who attempt to turn us into weapons. Please try to remember that your father is amongst those." Yami replied as she crossed one leg over the other, dangling a pitch-black sandal from her toes. "And he is currently rotting in your sibling Shinigami's stomach. Which I think would have been a fair compromise." Yami raised an eyebrow. "Care to elaborate?" "Only the Kyuubi's strength is so much so that it requires a seal as strong as the Reaper Death Seal to seal it within a Jinchuriki. If Kami made the price of creating all Jinchuriki the sealers sold, then the practice would be used a lot more sparingly than currently. I will bring it under advisement, and I will bring the idea up with Kami. Now I implore you to cease this foolishness and allow Sekhmet to fade like her kin." "No, I made a promise to my goddess and I will see it through," Naruto replied with conviction in his voice. Yami sighed as she stood and walked towards him. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Between you and me, I'm rooting for you. The others have been far too complacent, but I will shed tears when this ends the way I know it will end. When this ends the way I know it will end," Naruto said with conviction. "I will ask my goddess if she will extend an invitation to you to join her new pantheon." Yami giggled slightly and ran her fingers softly over his cheek. "So either way I win. Though I prefer your way. We've been far too complacent on my sister's orders and I'd rather get back to being proactive the way we were back in the days before the disaster. We'll see where this goes, Yami." He smiled and kissed her hand. "Good luck, little heretic." She smiled as she faded away and unfroze the people in the castle. Gato's body went limp and dropped to the ground. "So, what now, champion?" Zabuza asked. "Now we spread a message," Naruto said as he walked over to the bay windows and opened them, before throwing Gato's body out the opening and down to the forest floor below, gaining the attention of those who had been looking over to the sounds of fighting and explosions. Naruto flashed through several foreign hand signs designed by his goddess for her divine jutsu. "Divine art, roar of Sekhmet." He inhaled deeply before letting his jaw drop in a loud roar. His voice carried across the island as a spectral image of his goddess standing roughly 100 feet tall appeared behind the compound, her polearm raised high above her head as she let out a roar that was powerful enough to move the clouds and clear the mist away from the island as if it were washing away the darkness from the island. "Does this mean we're going to war?" Zabuza asked. "We didn't start this war, but we will finish it. Now let's get back to Tenzuna's house. I have a person in mind for the new daimyo possession, and I'd like to ask her in person." "Got it. You go on, I'll take care of the cleanup here so she's got a fresh office to work from." "Good man," Naruto said as he exited the building to regroup with his team. "What the hell was that?" Yugao asked as she looked at the youngest member of her team. "A message to the people of this country," Naruto replied. "Gato is dead, we should head back and inform Tenzuna. I've never seen a jutsu like that before. It's a unique jutsu I created during my training. He replied, leaving the explanation there. Naruto-kun, where is Zabuza-sama? Haku asked, looking at him from her spot next to Anko. He's staying behind to clean out the bodies for the incoming daimyo. I'd like you to come back with us for the moment though. Haku nodded. Zabuza had told her of Naruto's position and had instructed her to follow his orders as if they were his own. The group made their way back to Tanzuna's household, and were immediately greeted to the frantic and excited questions of the residents as well as Hana. After a quick explanation of the events at the manor, Naruto and Tsunami went to prepare dinner as Yugao and Anko took Hana to the docks to give her a further debrief. Tsunami, I'd like you to become the daimyo of Nami, Naruto said as he began cutting potatoes for dinner. Tsunami's eyes widened in shock. Naruto-kun, I'm flattered, but I'm just a housewife. I know, Tsunami-chan. However, I have faith in you and I will guide you as best I can. I have a question for you though. What do you think of Kami? Tsunami raised an eyebrow but put her knife down and leaned her back against the counter. I don't want to sound like a heretic, but Kami abandoned this land the day she let Gato take over and enslave us for 5 years. Naruto nodded as he placed a hand on hers. Do you remember that technique I used that made the giant avatar you saw in the sky? Yes, I even remember the liberties you took with the image's style of dress. She giggled slightly. Actually, that's the way she normally dresses, Naruto said with a slight smirk. Tsunami raised an eyebrow in confusion. That avatar was made in the image of the goddess I serve. Her name is Sekhmet. She's a goddess of war and healing, Naruto said as he went on to explain what he had told Anko and Ami. Wow, Naruto-kun, that's quite the tale, and if I hadn't seen what you'd done I'd probably never have believed it. Take the night and think about it. Naruto smiled, rubbing her lower back. I will, and I'll get back to you tomorrow while you're on guard duty. She smiled as she returned to cooking. That night, as Naruto laid awake in his room, the day's events played back in his mind. So, this is it, we're really going to war, he thought aloud to himself as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning Naruto found himself sitting on the docks as he watched Tsunami hanging her family's laundry. He was definitely enjoying the view of her long-toned legs being exposed by a pair of short shorts, and her trimmed waist bared by her sports bra. I'm sorry once again for my state of dress, Naruto-kun, but it's unusually warm today. Though, it makes it the perfect day for drying laundry. She smiled as she walked down the pier in her flip-flops, placing the family's garments on the lines. I don't mind at all. I quite enjoy the view. He smiled as he watched the way her body moved. Tsunami blushed heavily as she straightened out a bed sheet. Naruto-kun, it's not nice to tease. We both know I'm just a middle-aged former housewife. I'm nothing special. You're far more special than you realize, Tsunami-chan. Now, have you thought about my offer? Tsunami turned to him with a small smile. I tried praying to her last night. The image you conjured in the sky made it easier than I thought it would be. I asked her if she believed I was the right person for the job. As I'm sure you've noticed, due to you being the one to take Gato's life, your word as the hero of Nami has a lot of weight, and I didn't want to make you look foolish if I didn't live up to your expectations of me. She moved to her knees and placed her hands on the ground in front of her. I would be honored to take on the responsibility of leading Nami in your stead. Naruto smiled and placed his hand on her shoulder. I'm sure you'll do a splendid job. I'll be leaving Zabuza and Haku here with you. Zabuza will help train your initial militia while Haku will begin instructing your new hospital personnel. She's no doctor, but she's an expert in field medicine. Tsunami smiled as she stood up and kissed Naruto's cheek. Thank you for everything you've done for us, Naruto-kun. I will do both you and Lady Sekhmet proud. Naruto smiled and rubbed her cheek. I know you will, Tsunami-chan, and I can't wait to come back and see all of the progress you've made. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I also saw that you've taken over Gato's shipping company. What are your plans for that? I'll be leaving a blood clone here to run it. While I'll use some of the money to aid in the restoration of Uzushio, I'll be using a good chunk of it to invest in Wave in addition to the tax revenue you'll be receiving from the shipping company itself. I'm predicting we'll be at 100% in roughly 2 to 3 years. Are you sure we'll be able to fly under Kami's radar until then? Kami is already well aware of my movements. However, I don't see her moving against me for at least a few months. She won't want to draw attention to our emerging sect until it's become prominent enough that it can't be ignored by the mortal population. However, I have this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that she'll try something to force my hand soon enough. You have an unwavering conviction, Naruto-kun. Most men would have broken after all you've been through. Naruto smiled and squeezed her hand gently. I was born broken. My being is created by the unholy merging of demonic beasts and human flesh. However, being broken is what keeps me from submitting to people like Kami. Those of us who are born broken cannot be broken by another. Yet despite being broken you work so hard to keep us all together. Naruto smiled as the two bathed in the moment together. After several days of aiding in both the completion of the bridge and the restoration of the town, the group of shinobi stood on the edge of the bridge connecting Nami to southern Hi-no-Kuni. The village had gathered to meet them and see the group off. The new daimyo of Nami was stood at the front of the pack, flanked by her father and son who in turn were flanked by her new personal guard Zabuza and his apprentice Haku. Thank you, shinobi of Konoha. We of Wave are eternally grateful for your intervention on our behalf. I have already sent a letter to your Hokage telling him of your deeds here and he has agreed to negotiate an alliance after your Chunin exams have finished. Thank you, Lady Tsunami, Yugao said with a bow, though she felt a bit awkward since the woman was a mere housewife only a few days ago. We look forward to your visit to our village. After a few more pleasantries, the group began their trek back to Konoha. As they traversed the forested path leading back to their home village, Yugao decided to take another stab at peeling back the layers of mystery known as Naruto Uzumaki. So, Naruto-kun, can you tell me more about the jutsu you used at Gato's castle? I could, Naruto said, clasping his hands behind his head as he strolled down the path. Yugao waited for a moment, before her eyebrow twitched. Well, what? I said I could, I never said I would, Naruto said as he stuck his tongue out at her. Yugao stumbled for a moment, causing Anko to burst out in a fit of laughter. Good luck, Yugao-chan. Kurenai has been barking up that tree for months now. There must be something that could be offered for the information, she said, leaning forward as she slowly unzipped her jonin jacket, exposing a bit of cleavage. Naruto adopted a slightly bored expression as he turned to Anko. Anko-chan, do your friends never learn? I thought I already told Kurenai that base-level seduction techniques don't work on me. Oh, going after Yugao-chan now. Anko's voice spoke within his mind thanks to the followers network that Sekhmet had set up for her inner circle. I swear he'd probably have been better off serving my friend Hecate, the fertility goddess. Was it not you who started this whole series of events by putting me on a team with Kurenai in an effort to pimp me out for more followers? Naruto teased as he continued to walk down the path. His response was the innocent whistling of his goddess. That's what I thought, my beloved. Naruto turned to Yugao and smiled. Yugao-chan, you hang around the Inuzuka compound fairly regularly, so you must be familiar with clan affairs. Yugao looked confused, but given that he had begun speaking to her, she decided to play along. I'm aware of the basics of how clans operate. So you're aware of the Ciare, correct? Yes, but why are you bringing this up? Well, when we return I'll be entering the Ciare as the last Uzumaki. Naruto smiled. So if you really want to learn my secrets you could always become my wife, he said cheerfully. Yugao stumbled and fell flat on her face. She felt a vain throb in her head as she heard the uproarious laughter of both Naruto and Anko. She jumped to her feet and scowled at the both of them. That wasn't funny, Naruto. You shouldn't throw out proposals as a joke. Naruto smiled and took her hand, kissing the back of it. My apologies, Yugao-chan. Though it was only a half joke. If you do wish, I'd be happy to take you out on a date at a later point. Yugao's face went flush as she pulled her hand back to her chest. Enough jokes, Naruto. This one is not a joke, Yugao-chan. Though I'm happy to give you as much time as you need to think it over. Yugao's face turned an even darker shade of red. I'll think about it. Naruto smiled and nodded before turning to Hana. The offer extends to you too, Hana-chan. Hana's face turned a similar shade of red to Yugao's as she waved her hands in front of her face. I didn't say anything. How did I get roped into this? By being so beautiful, charming, and caring, he replied with his own charming smile. Hana's brain began working rapidly as she tried to process how she'd managed to get herself roped into this. She quickly turned her gaze to Anko, who she was sure was responsible. Anko merely turned her head to the side and whistled innocently. Don't you give me that innocent look, Anko Mitarashi. Anko laughed and wrapped her arms around Hana's neck and nuzzled their cheeks together. Come on, Hana, just think about it. The three of us can all be sisters, and we all know he's only a small push away from snagging Nai-chan too. Naruto's sweat dropped looking at Anko. Anko-chan, please do not make it sound as though I'm some nefarious pervert scheming to take all of the world's women for myself. I mean, at this point I think that might actually be the case. Yugao teased. Naruto smiled as he turned his attention to Yugao. You just got yourself out of the hot seat, Yugao-chan. Are you really so eager to jump right back in? Yugao stiffened as she immediately looked away from him. I apologize for my outburst, she muttered. As I told Yugao-chan, you're welcome to think over the idea of a date once we return, Hana-chan. Independent Illinois, think about it, she muttered. Well then, allow me to treat us all. The village paid back their loan to me with a small bit of interest as a thanks for finishing the job so quickly. I'd like to use some of it to treat you girls to a night at the nearby hot springs, seeing as we'll need to rest for at least one night on the way back. Yugao nodded. That bridge truly did cut down the travel time between the nations. That it did. It took us 3 days on the way there. Naruto smiled, placing his hands behind his head. Now do you girls want a night at the hot springs? Hell yeah! Anko said with a pumped fist as she wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck. You're the best, Ruto. Should we really be letting the youngest member of our team pay for our lodgings for the night? It feels like we'd be taking advantage of him. Hana objected slightly. Relax, Hana-chan. We'd have to stop for lodgings anyway, and at least this way we get to actually enjoy ourselves and relax. Now I'm pretty sure I saw that place up here somewhere, Naruto replied as he sent a clone to survey ahead of them. There it is, he said. Lead the charge towards the hot springs. There's no talking him out of it once he's decided. Might as well enjoy the ride. Anko grinned as she took off after her blonde friend. Yugao and Hana sighed in defeat as they took off after the two hyperactive shinobi. Well, at least the mission is almost done. Yugao smiled. Hana nodded. Yeah, but given how far ahead of schedule we are, Hokage-sama might decide that our team works well enough together to make this a regular thing. Hana smiled. Yugao looked out onto the road at the two knuckleheads of her group chasing after one another to reach the inn first, and shook her head with a smile. I can't say I'd really mind all that much, after paying for their room for the night, which Naruto reluctantly agreed to one large room as to not separate the group. The four shinobi made their way to the hot springs only to make a startling discovery. Mixed bathing? Naruto asked in confusion, never having seen such a sign at the bathhouses in Konoha. The hell does that mean? Yugao sighed as she pinched the bridge of her nose. It means men and women bathe together here. Given we're the only four here as far as I can sense, I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing, as it allows the four of us to stick closely together. I can always just come back in an hour or so, Naruto said as he started to turn back towards the room, only to have his collar snagged by Anko. Nope, you heard our team leader, safety in numbers. Besides, this is the perfect time for a little team bonding. Anko smiled as she dragged him into the changing area. As Naruto sat, trying not to make his discomfort at being surrounded by four beautiful women clad only in their bath towels known, the group was proven wrong regarding the lack of others in the bathing area. Not far from them, locks of red hair peeked their way out from under a towel and fell softly in front of dark eyes. This recon shit is boring as fuck, but at least it gets me out of the village and I get to pick my own lodgings. The woman sighed in relief as she let herself sink to her shoulders in the bath. She'd heard the slight commotion on the other side of the rocks but had chose to ignore it. As long as they didn't bother her, Taiya really didn't give a shit who was here. We'll see you back at the room, Naruto-kun. A jovial voice called out as she heard the three other women exit the bath. We're gonna go grab some drinks and have some girl talk. Don't stay in too long, Naruto-kun. I'd hate for our first mission having to end with me giving you first aid because you passed out in the baths. A slightly more considerate but still teasing tone called out. Mission? Great, they must be Konoha shinobi. Alright, you three, have fun. A cheery voice called back after them as she heard the water move slightly. Let's see, I know that woman said there was one over here somewhere. The voice said to no one in particular as it grew closer and closer to her. Ah, there it is. She turned her head to see the back of a blonde head looking at the vending machine to her right. The sun-kissed blonde locks fell down, and lay just atop one of the most toned and muscular backs she'd ever personally seen. "What the fuck, how is this guy so ripped?" she asked to no one in particular, as she watched him slip a few Rio in the machine and press the button. Naruto heard the movement behind him, and turned his head towards it, seeing the young redhead sitting behind him. "Care to join me for a drink? I consider it a sin to drink alone, and my team seems to have abandoned me for the night in favor of girl talk." Tayuya thought for a moment. This boy didn't know who she was, and he was a Konoha shinobi, so she could pull a little bit of information, thus being able to report in while being able to extend her vacation. Not to mention, if she built some kind of relationship with him, it might help her with posing as a tourist visiting her friend in the village when she went to gather more intel. Tayuya let out a small sigh before looking up at him. "Sure, why the fuck not, just don't try anything funny. Wouldn't dream of it," he said as he grabbed a pair of saucers and an extra bottle from the vending machine. Slipping into the water, he poured them each a saucer and handed one over the lean-looking redhead. "So, what's your name, Tayuya Uzumomi?" she said as she took the saucer and tilted it back, letting the burning sake slide down her throat. Once it emptied, she held it up for Naruto to pour her more. "What about you, Sunshine? Naruto Uzumaki." He smiled as he poured her another cup. Tayuya raised an eyebrow as she looked over at him. "One of your parents from Uzushio?" "My mother was an Uzumaki who moved to Konoha shortly before the destruction of Uzushio. She died the night of my birth, though. That explains why you don't know about my family." The Uzumomi were a smaller clan from Uzushio that acted as support ninja, mostly specializing in auditory genjutsu. "It's actually why I picked up the flute for my career as a traveling minstrel." "You're a musician?" Naruto asked curiously. "A damn good one, too," she said confidently as he poured her another cup. "Getting a bit hot in here. Wanna grab a couple more bottles and join me for a nightcap? I think your friends are still drinking anyway." Naruto smiled and stood up. "I could go for a few more rounds with a beautiful young countryman," he said as he pulled out a few more Rio and grabbed a few bottles from the machine. "To reconnecting the clans of Uzushio, then." Tayuya grinned as she stood up, the warm dripping towel clinging to her lean athletic body. Naruto smiled as he followed her back to her room, his eyes trailing lightly over her robe-clad figure, as she seemed to move with an almost impossible grace that caused him to become slightly entranced by the way she moved. Tayuya opened the door to her room and promptly plopped down on the floor. Leaning back on her palms, she flexed her soft pale toes and took in a deep breath. "Now how about that drink?" Naruto smiled as he knelt down. "So how long are you going to keep pretending you're not a shinobi?" Tayuya jumped slightly but looked at him. "What are you talking about? I have a unique ability to sense negative emotions, including deception. Just like I sensed how jumpy you got when you heard my team and I talking about our mission. Your anxiety skyrocketed when you figured out I was a shinobi, and you were half lying about being a traveling minstrel, so I'm guessing that's your cover career." Tayuya tensed as she looked over at her flute. "You and I both know genjutsu on an Uzumaki is useless, and my team of Chunin and Jonin are only a couple doors down. So the moment we start fighting they're gonna get pissed you ruined their evening." Tayuya growled as she slowly moved her hand back to her lap. "I didn't want to fight anyway. I'm enjoying the night. So, why is a foreign shinobi in Southern Fire Country? You're probably going to kill me anyway." "I'm working for Orochimaru. I'm scouting the towns and defenses around Konoha while someone else scouts the interior." Naruto felt unnerved at the idea of a spy but pressed on. "What's Orochimaru planning?" Tayuya crossed her arms. "I'm not telling you that without some kind of promise of protection. I can offer you asylum in Nami as well as a seal that will disguise your appearance and chakra signature. If Orochimaru really is planning something big, I doubt he'll notice you're gone until it's too late. I'm one of his royal guards. He'll notice I'm gone, but you're right. I'm not set to report back in for another 3 weeks." "Good, now tell me, what is he planning?" Tayuya sighed as she leaned back on her palms. "He's planning to invade Konoha during the finals of the Chunin exams to at minimum kill the Hokage." "I take it you don't agree with this plan?" Tayuya shook her head as she poured herself another drink. "The plan is stupid and it's not gonna work. It might take out a small chunk of the village, But the only capable fighters we have are Orochimaru, the royal guards meaning myself and 3 others and the spy. The guards will be busy putting up a barrier around the fight between the Hokage and Orochimaru, while the spy is doing something else. I wasn't told what, I just know he's supposed to be doing something during the invasion. Most of our Jonin could be taken out by low to mid Chunin from the leaf, so this is literally going to be a smash, grab and get the hell out. Naruto sighed and nodded as he leaned over filling her cup once again. How well will the barrier work without you? It requires 4 people. Currently only those of us in the Sound 4 can use it. If I stay missing for more than a couple of weeks, he'll likely start training a replacement for the position, though I doubt they'll be strong enough to hold the barrier as long as me. Naruto nodded, thinking it over for a moment. I see, I'm going to send you to Nami. You'll meet up with my associate Sabuza. Give him everything you can on the barrier. I'll need to study it as thoroughly as possible so that I can come up with a counter for it. You really think you can counter it? Tayuya asked with a raised eyebrow. I am an Uzumaki. Fuinjutsu is a specialty. And you promise you can offer me amnesty afterwards? In Nami definitely, in Konoha we'll have to see at a later point. Now what else can you tell me about the invasion? Oto is meant to ally itself with Suna. Suna's economy has gone down the shitter in recent years since the Kaze daimyo has lost faith in their abilities and has started sending missions to Konoha and Taki. So, in their desperation they're turning to a man they don't fully understand, which will cost them dearly. Tayuya nodded. So, what will you do with this information? While I have no real love for the people of my home village, I will defend them for the time being. I'll bring this information to the Hokage. I won't tell him of you for the time being, at least not until after the invasion has taken place. This way, even if we fail to protect him, your identity and involvement will remain a secret. I'll head out first thing tomorrow morning. I'm not expected back in Oto for a while, so it will be a bit before my absence is noticed. Naruto smiled as he poured her another drink. Good, the longer it takes them to realize you've defected the better. It means they'll have less time to train someone to take your place. Tayuya nodded as she took another drink and stretched out, flexing her toes. You better come to Nami and visit every once in a while. Naruto smiled as he tilted his cup back. Don't worry, I just found one of the only people left on this rock who is descended from the motherland. I won't be losing contact with you so easily. Good, if you're looking to bolster Nami's forces, there is a woman who works for Orochimaru. Her name is Gyurin. She is the caretaker for a boy named Yukimaru. If you can ensure him a better life than he would have with Orochimaru, she might be willing to defect. Especially if you can show that you can protect the 2 of them from him. Naruto nodded, though even with the goddess's help he knew he was still no match for Orochimaru on his own. I'll take it under advisement. The 2 continued drinking well into the night, until Tayuya had passed out. Naruto had stripped her down to her underwear and tucked her into bed before returning to his own bedroom for the evening. The next morning his group left for their return trip to Konoha. So, Naruto, where were you last night? You didn't come back to the room until after we'd all fallen asleep. Yugao asked curiously. I ran into an interesting person and decided to have a drink together. We spent the night chatting until she fell asleep, gallivanting around picking up strange women on the road. Anko grinned as she leaned over his shoulder. So tell me, Naru, did you tap that? Anko-chan, you know I'm saving my innocence for marriage, he said, looking at her with an innocent pout. That's bullshit, and you know it. She laughed. Prove it in a court of law, sister. He laughed, sticking his tongue out at her. Yugao and Hana giggled slightly at the antics of the 2. You 2 already practically act like a married couple. Hana joked. I mean, we've practically been joined at the hip for years now. Anko explained, wrapping her arm around Naruto's shoulder. Yep, we're practically married as it is. Naruto smiled, throwing his arm around Anko. We're pretty much just waiting until I get a little bit older to get married. Probably in the next 2 or 3 years. So just enough time for you to make Chunin and gain some experience? Hana asked as they continued making their way down the road. Exactly, Naruto said with a smile, though he omitted the part where he was actually waiting until he gathered the appropriate supplies and allies to remove himself from the village and rebuild his homeland under his goddess. After several hours, the group now stood in front of the aged Hokage finishing their report. So, you managed to recruit Zabuza and he's now working as the guard for the new daimyo? That's right, Gigi. Tsunade-chan will be here in about a month just before the Chunin exams to finalize the trade treaty with the village. She plans to hold off on the full alliance negotiations until after the exams to avoid taking up too much of your time during that time. You three have done an amazing job on this A-rank mission, Naruto-kun. Now is there anything else? Naruto nodded. May we have the room? Yugao nodded. Naruto had informed her of the information he'd received but had stated he'd killed the Odo shinobi after he was attacked shortly before meeting the mysterious girl last night. She didn't necessarily buy it, but she didn't want to push him to reveal his sources given the information he had discovered was so vital to the village. Waving her hand, she dismissed the rest of Hiruzen's guard and sealed off the room. Yugao, is there a reason you dismissed my guards and activated the security seals? Hiruzen asked sternly. This is in regards to Orochimaru, sir, Yugao said, as she watched his face harden. Hiruzen, Naruto said, shocking the group that the boy would call the Hokage by name. Orochimaru is planning your assassination and an invasion during the finals of the Chunin exams. Hiruzen folded his hands in front of his face. Tell me everything. Naruto nodded and spent the next 20 minutes explaining everything Tayuya had told him, including the location of the main Odo base, which she had left him in the morning before departing the inn. After retrieving this information, I killed the shinobi and burned his body to ash to avoid Orochimaru noticing that his subordinate was dead. According to the intel I gathered, he's not due back until about a week before the exams start, so we have plenty of time to prepare. Hiruzen nodded. Naruto, my boy. I fear I must thrust more responsibility upon you. I will be announcing your lineage to the council this evening and giving you your inheritance. I'll need you to increase your training so that when the exams come. Lord Hokage, why not simply attack Oto now instead of putting the village in danger? Yugao asked. Hiruzen sighed as he took another drag of his pipe. If only it were that simple, Yugao. However, we live in a world governed by politics. Oto is a sovereign nation. If we attack them without concrete evidence that they are acting against us, we'll be seen as the aggressors. Naruto crossed his arms and grunted. Not to mention they're a new minor nation, one of the big five launching a full-blown invasion under the pretenses. One of my genin told me an S-rank missing ninja from my village might be the village leader, and founder would basically be laughed out of the room as a power grab on Konoha's part. Hiruzen nodded. Very astute, Naruto-kun. So, since you brought this information to me, that makes you the de facto mission leader. How do you want to play this? Have Jiraiya meet me at the Uzumaki clan compound as soon as he can. I'll give him the location of the main Oto base. We'll have him send a few spies in to gather intel. If we can gain proof that it's Orochimaru, all the better, but we mainly want to figure out their numbers. Give me the standard leave time for an A-rank mission in the Uzumaki compound and I'll look into seals to reinforce the walls against his snake summons. You think he'll be able to summon that many while also launching his assassination attempt? Hiruzen asked. My guess would be that he attempts to strike a deal with the Snake Clan to allow his subordinates to sign the contract as well. Hiruzen thought for a moment. The Snake Clan has always been extremely bloodthirsty. They would likely make such a deal if it meant they could feast on the fallen. I'll work on the reinforcement seals, Naruto said, turning to Anko. Can you see if any of your people can look into who the spy might be? Copy that, Rito. Anko grinned. Naruto turned to Hiruzen. Gigi, since Ami is taking over for me and I've got the leave time, can I request Yugao-chan for some additional training? I need to brush up on my kenjutsu. I'd also like request Hana-chan if possible. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. Yugao, I understand, but why Hana? I need some help studying anatomy. Plus, with Hana-chan joining in on my training sessions with Yugao-chan, it'll give her a chance to up her training too. Extremely generous, Naruto-kun. I'll approve it as long as the two of them agree to it. I'm up for it. It's rare I get to train in kenjutsu with someone outside my unit, Yugao said with a slight smile. I'm in. I've been looking to move up in the ranks, so this should be helpful. Hana agreed. Alright, the two of you will meet Naruto at the Uzumaki compound tomorrow at 6 a.m. for now. Naruto-kun, meet me back here at 6 p.m. and I'll show you to the council chamber. Sounds good, Gigi. I'll see you in a bit. After leaving the Hokage Tower, Naruto made his way home to meet with Ami. Ami-chan, you in here? he asked as he walked into the temple area of the... I'm over here, she called out, appearing from behind the brazier in her priestess garments. How was your mission in Nami? She asked as she hugged him like a wife hugging her husband when he returned from work. Pretty good. I'll tell you all about it at dinner tonight. For now I need you to help me seal up the temple. We'll be moving it and everything else to the Uzumaki compound. Ami's eyes widened. Does that mean that I'll be here alone, or do I have to move out? She asked in concern. Don't be ridiculous, Ami-chan, you'll be moving in with me. You and Enko-chan are part of the family after all. Ami's smile brightened as she pulled him into a bone-crushing hug. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled. He'd have to take her out on a date after he was done with his council meeting. Pulling back, he reached into his pocket and handed her a small wad of bills. Take this after we get everything packed up and go buy yourself a new outfit. You and I are going on a date after my council meeting tonight. Ami's face went dark red, but Naruto could see a light spark in her eyes. That sounds amazing, Naruto-kun. 6 rolled around and Naruto met with Hiruzen and made their way into the council chambers. Hiruzen, what is the meaning of this meeting and why is this boy here? Koharu asked. Naruto scowled at the lack of respect the elder seemed to have for his grandfather. I brought you all here to announce Naruto-kun's lineage. What lineage? That thing is an orphan. One of the civilian council members stated. The others nodded except for one brunette woman in the back. Hiruzen leaked out a bit of killer intent towards the man before speaking. Naruto Uzumaki is the son of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze. His full name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Cries of outrage came from the civilian council as they adamantly denied the statement. Will you all shut your fucking mouths? Some Inuzuka called out from the shinobi council side. How dare you speak to us like that, you canine bitch? One of the civilian council members cried before he was silenced by a near-lethal amount of killer intent. The shinobi in the room were shocked when they found the source of the ki was none other than Naruto Uzumaki himself. I would choose my next words extremely carefully if I were you, councilman. Insulting a shinobi clan has historically not ended well for the offending party, he said, lightly tapping a finger on the table in front of him. The other shinobi in the room nodded in agreement as they glared at the civilian who had spoken up. Sim sent a small smirk Naruto's way and nodded her thanks to the boy. While she didn't need him to stand up for her, she did appreciate the gesture of loyalty between shinobi clans. Getting back on subject. Naruto is taking up the position of clan head of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. As such, he will be placed under the CRA as per Konoha law. Naruto scowled at the greedy glint he noticed in the eyes of the civilian council members save the brunette he'd noticed earlier. It was no secret that the Uzumaki had been the wealthiest clan in Konoha, due to the fact that Kushina had inherited the entirety of Uzushio's wealth after its destruction and Nito's passing. The Namikaze fortune was nothing to sneeze at either. True, they were only a clan due to Minato being the Hokage. As he was an orphan, he was the only member. However, he had accumulated quite the fortune with his series of S-rank missions during the Third Shinobi World War, and had invested it wisely during the time following the war, and the fortune had only grown, until his death shortly after becoming Hokage. Naruto knew that the reason the civilian council was now eyeing him was due to the fact that they could now offer up their daughters for marriage in an effort to get their hands on a cut of said fortune. So has the boy been offered any brides so far? One of the council members asked. I have not. However, I would like to hurry this along as I have a date planned following this meeting. Sim smirked. Oh? Who's the lucky girl, pup? Naruto chuckled. A dear friend of mine, Ami. I've been meaning to ask her out for a while now, but as you know, the beginning of a shinobi career is often the busiest. That it is, pup. Though from what I hear, you owe my daughter Hana a date once you make Chunin. She teased. Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Guilty as charged. Just remember to treat her right, or the Uzumaki line ends with you, she said as she made a slicing motion with a clawed finger towards his genitals. The other men in the room subconsciously covered their crotches. I'll be a good boy. Naruto gulped slightly as he waved his hands placatingly. Good pup. She smirked. Now let's wrap this up so the boy can go finger his girlfriend behind the training posts. Some. Mabuki Haruno called out indignantly. Oh hush, Mabuki, or I'll tell this pup and yours about what happened during the Third War after my Jonin promotion. Mabuki's face went flush as the men in the room save for Hayashi and Shibi looked between the two with perverted expressions. Don't you dare tsum! Mabuki shouted. I don't know, I'd quite like to hear that story, Naruto said, putting his finger to his chin. Oh, got a thing for MILFs, do you? Tsum asked with a feral smirk. There is something to be said for experience. Especially when it comes to women like yourself and Mabuki who age like fine wine. As opposed to others who age like milk, he said, sending a petty side-eye towards Koharu, causing her to huff. Give it a couple of years for you to finish puberty, and I might take you up on that. Tsum grinned. Hiruzen cleared his throat before looking at Naruto. Moving on, he said, trying to change the subject. The minimum number of wives for each clan is 4, meaning you'll need a total of 8. Naruto nodded. Understood, though I'll have to hold off on the majority of my possible candidates for the time being. Oh? Why is that, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked. Like Hana-chan, the others are waiting until I become a chunin and get slightly older. A specific example is Anko Mitarashi. We've spent so much time together over the years that we are practically married in all but law and carnally at this point. Once an appropriate amount of time has passed, we've already agreed upon a public ceremony. I thought you said you didn't have any for sure candidates? Mabuki asked as the others in the room, specifically the men, were recovering from their state of shock. Naruto chuckled. You'll have to forgive me, Mabuki-chan. I tend to have a tendency for the dramatic and theatric. He smiled. That snake whore has no place as a member of a noble clan, much less as one of its matriarchs. One of the civilian council members shouted, breaking the others from their stupor. They were once again shocked as Naruto's ki flooded the room. It had now grown to such a density and volume that the civilians began to choke, and even the elder council who had survived the First and Second World War almost buckled, as they hadn't felt such pressure since their times serving under the second Hokage Tobirama Senju. Naruto-kun, please calm yourself, Hiruzen said as he tried to calm the boy. He didn't know how the boy, even with his years of killing bandits and low-rank missing ninja, had managed such a fearsome amount of killer intent that he hadn't felt in over half a century. Naruto's head snapped towards the Hokage. Truthfully, part of it was him, part of it was subconsciously drawing on the fox's chakra, and part of it was his status as the champion of a war goddess. Thanks to her other domain of healing, he was able to tap into her natural bloodlust without losing control. Lord Sarutobi, Naruto said with a low tone as the other clan heads in the room stiffened at the boy addressing the Hokage by his station as the head of the Sarutobi clan, while the Umbu guards in the room who had witnessed the relationship between the two were even more on edge, knowing that Naruto calling the Hokage anything outside of Gigi meant that the situation was deadly serious. I hope you're not suggesting that I allow people to go around insulting the allies of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans without consequence, especially when that ally happens to be one of the future matriarchs of both clans, he said with a deadly edge to his voice. Hiruzen sighed. Only about 10 minutes as a clan head and he was already utilizing clan law and working the political stage like his own personal puppet show, though he had to admit, as a clan head himself, he couldn't necessarily disagree with the boy's statement. Understandable, Lord Uzumaki. I cannot allow you to kill this man though. However, if you would like to take a small token of revenge as a statement to prevent any further action. Lord Hokage, you can't be serious, the councilman shouted as he was quickly restrained by a group of Umbu. Naruto, the man's ring, it's a symbol of an old merchant family. It would do as a splendid trophy, and a reminder that even old families could crumble under your wrath, Sekhmet stated in his mind as her own rage boiled over the insult towards one of her loyal disciples. Naruto strode to the man and looked to Yugao, who was dressed in her cat-masked Umbu uniform. Cat, please hand me your tanto for a moment, he stated, looking towards her. Cat looked to the Hokage, who nodded. The Umbu nodded back and handed the boy her weapon. You wouldn't dare. The Hokage said you couldn't kill me. Naruto smirked. I'm not going to kill you, he said, his grin growing evil. Cat, please place the man's right hand on the table. Cat nodded and did so. Curious as to what the boy was planning. Was he going to go the route of the Yakuza and cut the tip of the man's pinky off in retaliation? This is a lovely signet ring you have. It looks like an old heirloom. he said, causing the man's eyes to widen as he attempted to pull his hand away, only to find it squeezed by the cat-mazed Umbu. I think I'll take it, he said, bringing the blade down on the man's finger, severing it. He held it up, and allowed the ring to slip off into his other hand before dropping the finger on the table in front of the man. The council member screamed in agony as he clutched his new stump. You bastard! Give it back! That ring has been in my family for generations. It's from before the founding of the village. Then it will make an excellent reminder to all to not cross me or my people, he said before turning to the Hokage. My grudge has been satisfied, Lord Sarutobi. Naruto spoke. However, considering decorum has broken down, I suggest we table this meeting for now. Hiruzen nodded, folding his hands in front of him. A wise suggestion, Lord Uzumaki. This meeting is adjourned for the time being. The council began filing out of the chambers. The civilian council save Mabuki hung their heads low, doing their best to avoid the gaze of the Uzumaki head as they did, while the shinobi council sent the boy nods of approval at his handling of the situation. Even the stoic Danzo sent the boy a nod and slight smirk of approval at his ruthless and decisive reaction to the slight to his family's honor. As Hiruzen exited the chambers, he turned to Naruto with a smile. Naruto-kun, have your normal team along with Ami and Anko meet in my office in the morning. I have a mission for you. Naruto nodded. Of course, Gigi. With the two being the only ones left in the council chambers, Mabuki decided to approach Naruto. Lord Uzumaki, may I have a moment? Naruto turned to her in slight confusion. Of course, Lady Haruno. How may I be of assistance? Mabuki smiled. Please, Mabuki is fine. Naruto placed a finger to his chin, and looked up in mock pondering. All right, but only if you refer to me as Naruto. Mabuki giggled slightly, placing her hand to her mouth. It appears I walked right into that one. Very well, Naruto-kun. I know you said that you had a date this evening, but would you happen to still have some time beforehand to speak with me at my home? Naruto looked at the clock on the wall and smiled. Yes, I should have some time to spare. Please lead the way. It only took them a few minutes to make their way to the Haruno home from the council chambers. Would you mind waiting a moment? I despise the formal clothing I have to wear to council meetings, and I prefer to change as soon as possible once I get home. That's fine by me. One should be comfortable within their home. Do you mind if I take a seat while I wait? Of course, Naruto-kun. Make yourself at home, she said as she moved upstairs to change. Naruto took a seat on one of the couches and relaxed slightly. Any ideas what she's up to, Sek-chan? I've been keeping an eye on the other members of the graduating class. Her daughter's team is quite concerning to me. What do you mean, Sek-chan? Hatake is training the Inuzuka boy and the Uchiha in a way that is outside of his normal lazy character. The Inuzuka boy has his eyes set on Hinata. However, the Uchiha has decided to use Haruno to rebuild his clan. Though he is allowing the Inuzuka boy use of her while they bide their time until they make their move, so long as her virginity remains intact. The girl is so infatuated and delusionally devoted to the boy that she's become a willing whore to bring allies to his side. What is Hataki's role in all of this? He sees the Uchiha as the reincarnation of his lost friend Obito Uchiha. He wishes to restore the honor of the Uchiha by helping Sasuke take over the leaf, though I feel the Uchiha's ambition lay far beyond the borders of the village. I feel as though if he manages to get into the Hokage's seat, he will plunge the village into a third shinobi war. On top of that, I have seen the Inuzuka's intent. He does not view Hinata as a possible romantic interest, he sees her as his personal slave. He'll use her as a sex toy and a breeding slave to breed Inuzuka with the Byakugan, who will be able to take his clan techniques to new heights. Naruto gripped the edge of the couch in anger. I take it you have a plan. We cannot execute the Uchiha so quickly. However, Hatake has managed to pull some strings so that if there is a preliminary round in the Chunin exams, he's arranged for you to be forced to face Kiba, who plans to kill you during the preliminaries. The Uchiha has given his blessing, as he plans to take control of the Uzumaki estate and its jutsu, while Kiba will get you out of the way of his taking of Hinata. How do they know of the Uzumaki estate? My lineage was just announced a few hours ago. Hatake was your father's student. He was well aware of both your parents, and knows that your father's notes for the Hiroshin technique are hidden within the confines of the Uzumaki compound. He's told Sasuke of the jutsu along with the Rasengan and plans to steal your body from the morgue after the preliminary round in order to remove the blood seals on the compound. Naruto scowled as he thought for a moment. Do they have any other allies at the moment? No, however they are currently plotting to bring Shikamaru Nara and his father Shikaku into their ranks by currently undecided means. Naruto's thoughts raced as he heard footsteps coming down the staircase. Thank you, SEK-chan. We'll reconvene at a later time once I've had a chance to go over the information you've given me and discuss it with the faithful. Of course, my champion. Have fun with your latest MILF. Oh, and don't worry. My blessing can allow them to bear heirs long past their natural window, she spoke, disappearing with a giggle as she heard the steam coming off of Naruto's ears. Damnable perverted goddesses. He thought as he saw Mabuki make her way down the staircase. Dressed now in a sleeveless white button-up shirt that framed her sizable D-cup bust and a pair of dark pink leggings that accentuated her toned waist and right backside. Although, who am I to dispute the wisdom of a goddess? Naruto-kun, you're staring, Mabuki said with a slight blush. Naruto shook his head, clearing it of the impure thoughts that were surrounding it. My apologies, Mabuki-chan. I was just captivated by your beauty for a moment. I always knew you had a beautiful face and dazzling eyes, but I never expected a civilian politician to have such a stunning physique. Mabuki's blush darkened slightly as she gave off a light giggle. How sweet, Naruto-kun. Though you should know, before I was a politician I was a chunin who fought in the Third Shinobi War just like your parents. Though unlike others of my generation, such as your father and Tsunade, I decided to retire and become a politician after the war, as my father had passed and left me to run the Haruno banking clan. An interesting tale, though I'm quite interested in the tale Tsunade started in the council chambers. Mabuki let out a small squeak as she covered her face. Why did you have to bring that up? Naruto chuckled. Because the expression you make when it's brought up is absolutely adorable. Mabuki's blush deepened as she looked away with a pout. Jerk. Naruto smiled lightly. Now that I've gotten you in a better mood, how about we discuss the reason you brought me here? Mabuki nodded and placed her hands on her lap. I'm concerned for the future of my family. Naruto looked in slight confusion and concern. What do you mean, Mabuki-chan? I've noticed my daughter's behavior since becoming a genin. It concerned me, so I decided to read her diary, she said with a sullen expression. She hasn't written much. However, it seems she plans to eventually depose me and take the assets of the Haruno clan in order to further support some goal the Uchiha boy has. So why come to me? Naruto asked. Given your relationship with Tsunade, wouldn't you have been better off going to her with this? Mabuki sighed slightly. I can't go to Tsum directly with this. Really, I shouldn't be going directly to you with it, but I'm using the pretense of a marriage proposal to have this meeting with you. So, what do you want me to do? Mabuki fidgeted slightly under the gaze that was leveled at her by the young shinobi. I'd like to transfer the bulk of the Haruno clan's assets to the Uzumaki clan, leaving only enough for me to keep up appearances until Sakura makes her move. Then I would like you to offer me asylum within the Uzumaki compound. SEK-chan, do you sense any deception from her? I don't, Naruto-kun. Her intentions are pure. It won't work. What do you mean? Mabuki asked in concern. Sakura will claim after deposing you that your transfer of the Haruno was illegal, and use the civilians on the council who despise me to force us to return it, along with a hefty amount of interest that she'll likely use to buy more support on the council for herself and that Uchiha brat. What are you proposing then? Mabuki asked, becoming even more concerned than before at the boy's words. A proposal, between you and me. Mabuki's face flushed as she began to stutter. Did you say proposal? Exactly. If we married in secret and combined the Haruno with the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, we can then combine the finances of the Haruno clan with the other two clans. Then when Sakura challenges you for the position of clan head, I can technically fight her in your place. Then when she loses, I as the clan head will disown her. Mabuki's face was completely red in embarrassment. She couldn't deny that it was an excellent idea. Not to mention, considering how much he took after his father, he'd probably be quite the looker when he got older. Alright, I guess I can go along with it, but when should we do it? After the second round of the Chunin exams. We'll go to Gigi and have him sign the documents. We'll do this all in secret so that she won't suspect anything before she springs her trap once she makes Chunin. How do you know she'll make Chunin? Mabuki asked. I'm pretty sure she's making moves on the judges. If her team manages to make it to the finals, I'm sure she will have the judges push for their promotions regardless of their performance in the tournament. I believe you have made an excellent point, Naruto-kun. I'd be happy to be your wife if you'll have me. Naruto smiled and kissed her on the cheek. Then it settled Mabuki-chan. He smiled as he stood up. Just remember, you better pick out a cute outfit for our honeymoon after the exams. Maybe I'll even ask Sim-chan for some suggestions, he said with a wink as he walked to the door. Mabuki stuttered slightly as she wiggled back and forth slightly on the couch. Teasing jerk, she muttered as she looked at her feet, though if Naruto had looked below the hair he would have noticed the small smile on her face. Naruto smiled as he walked down the road towards the Uzumaki compound to prepare for his date. Things certainly are getting complicated quickly. Do you think Kami has something to do with it? If not directly, then she certainly has one of the other gods planting the seeds to destroy you. She won't intervene by directly ordering your execution until your following grows too large to ignore as to not legitimize you. But that doesn't mean she won't water the seeds of hatred that already exists within the hearts of your enemies. Don't worry, SEK-chan, no matter what comes our way, we'll get through it together. Up in the heavens, Kami was sitting upon her throne along with her sisters Yami and the Shinigami. That miserable little upstart runt. I should smite him right here and now. Kami screamed, kicking her pale feet violently as she bit down angrily on the collar of her kimono. Yami giggled as she placed the sleeve of her own dress to her lips. My dear sister, I have never seen a mortal get such a reaction out of you, Kami growled as she looked over at her sister. What the hell are you talking about, you little shit? Yami giggled. Oh, nothing, dear sister. You don't seem to be too concerned, sister, Shinigami mentioned from behind her mask. If he has his way, we'll all be deposed. Your little meeting with him also didn't seem to dissuade him. If I'm being honest, I think the boy has a crush on me. Even if he wins, I'm pretty sure the worst punishment I'll get is being made one of his concubines. She laughed lightly as she covered her mouth with the tips of her fingers. You little witch, Kami growled, looking at her sister. You're playing both sides, aren't you? Maybe just a bit, but there's nothing you can do about it. I'm not actively helping him. I'm merely refraining from acting directly against him. You bitch, Kami growled. She knew she couldn't act against her sister as they were technically of equal standing, and a power struggle between her own pantheon would simply leave an opening for that boy to exploit. While her sisters were bickering amongst each other, Shinigami was watching the mortal world from behind her mask. A small smirk was on her lips as she looked at the young Uzumaki walking down the road leading to his compound. Dear Uzumaki, it seems that you're going to be making things quite interesting around here. Naruto smiled as he waited in the living room for Ami to be ready for their date. He heard her footsteps coming down the stairs and looked towards the staircase. His eyes widened as he looked at her. She was now dressed in a light blue sundress and pair of white strapped sandals. How do I look? You look amazing, Ami-chan. That outfit really complements your figure, and the color really brings out your eyes. Ami blushed and kissed him on the cheek. You're so sweet, Naruto-kun. So, where to? It's a surprise, but we should arrive just in time. He smiled as he took her hand, leading her from the house. After several minutes of walking, the two found themselves atop the Hokage mountain with a Naruto clone putting the finishing touches on a dinner for two. The guests of honor have arrived, he said with a slight bow. Your dinner is served, please enjoy. He finished as he dispelled himself. Ami smiled brightly as she looked upon the sunset backdrop dinner. Wow, Naruto-kun, this is spectacular, she said as she leaned over and kissed his cheek. Naruto smiled as he turned and took her hand, planting a kiss on her knuckles. I'm glad you like it, Ami-chan. I wanted to do something special for you. This is our first date, and I wanted it to be a memorable one. Ami smiled and placed her hand on Naruto's cheek as she looked up at him. Thank you, Naruto-kun. You've done more for me than I could have ever asked for. You gave me a home, gave me a sensei, a family, faith, and a sense of purpose. You've given me the world, and I hope one day I can work hard enough to repay you for all of it, though I'm sure I'll never be able to. Naruto smiled, placing his hand on top of hers and moved it down to his chest, clasping it with the other one. You don't have to repay me for anything, Ami-chan. When I set out to help you, I did so because I wanted to. Once we started living together, I found myself slowly falling in love with you. When I finally realized that, I realized just how hard I had fallen. I love you, Ami-chan, and I want you by my side for the rest of my life. Ami smiled, tears threatening to spill over her eyes as she gazed upon the man in front of her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I love you too, and I'll always be here for you. Naruto smiled as he pulled the seat out for his first official girlfriend and watched as she elegantly took a seat. The two sat with each other, enjoying hours of conversation as they ate and drank deep into the night. The two finally made it back to their home around midnight and now sat on the small swing in the courtyard, looking up at the night sky. Ami-chan, I have something I need to tell you. Ami looked up at her new boyfriend, concern evident on her face as she saw the way he was looking out into the distance. She worried that she had done something wrong on the date, and maybe he was going to break up with her and kick her out of the compound. Maybe I should have been more forward. I should have done something. Teased him with my feet under the table, worn something that showed a little more cleavage. I know I'm only a B-cup right now, but something a little lower cut. Maybe it's not too late. I could pretend to drop something and bend over in front of him. I should have figured it out. He's got someone as sexy as Anko-chan hanging off him constantly. He must expect women to make the first move. I don't think I can give up my virginity yet, but I should be able to do at least enough to convince him not to leave me, she said, steeling her resolve as she prepared to degrade herself to keep hold of the first person to truly show a romantic interest in her. Ami-chan, are you okay? You're spacing out. Naruto's words broke her thought and shook her resolve slightly. I am fine, Naruto-kun. What did you want to ask me? She asked, trying to smile as she placed her hands in her lap and leaned forward, trying to show a bit of cleavage. Naruto blushed slightly as he attempted to pull his eyes away from her chest, not wanting to come off as a creep or a pervert in front of her. Well, I had a meeting with Gigi and the council today. I've been placed in the CRA, which means I'll need a minimum of 8 wives given I'm the last of 2 clans. I just want to be certain that you're okay with that before we go any further with our relationship. Ami sighed slightly in relief as she looked up at him. It's okay, Naruto. Lady Sekhmet already informed me of the CRA when I consulted her about pursuing her champion romantically. I'm okay with it, and I'm eager to grow our family together if you'll have me. Naruto smiled and leaned in, kissing her with a tender passion. Thank you, Ami-chan. Thank you for loving me. Ami smiled and leaned into him, capturing his lips, her fingers interweaving themselves in his golden locks. Always, my love. Meanwhile, across the village, deep within the Uchiha compound, a sweaty and exhausted Sakura laid on the floor, panting slightly as white fluid leaked from both her mouth and backside. 2 male figures stood next to her, finishing redressing themselves as they looked down at her. Her training is definitely paying off. Her stamina is much higher than it was when we first started doing this, the shorter of the two said with a chuckle. Even if her fighting skills are still pitiful, she still has a use as a breeder if her stamina continues to improve. The taller one said in a slightly bored tone, You two shouldn't spend so much time playing with the whore. A third figure said from a desk in the corner of the room as he turned his chair to face the other two. We don't have a lot of time before the exams. We should be focusing on training. Relax, Sasuke. The taller figure said in a placating and slightly patronizing manner. This is actually a good way to recover from training. Sex is the quickest way to lower one's blood pressure and reduce stress in order to avoid stress-related injuries. You should give it a try. He finished with a smile. I'll think about it, but it will have to wait until after we've gotten our hands on the Uchiha and Haruno fortunes. Thanks to the village laws, I only get a monthly stipend from the Uchiha accounts until I'm made a clan head, and I doubt Hiruzen will authorize it until I make Chunin. Kiba, do you believe yourself ready to deal with the Uzumaki? The shorter of the two figures grinned, looking at his squad leader. Sure am. Even if the judges manage to jump in before I can kill him, thanks to my lightning training with Kakashi here, I'll at least be able to cripple the Uzumaki. I doubt Sakura can beat Ino, but she should be able to at least force a draw. And you're more than capable of incapacitating Hina-chan. We just need to end Naruto's career after all, and that will delay the other two becoming Chunin for more than enough time for us to take over this village. Sasuke nodded and looked at the two men. Good, we'll reconvene here for training tomorrow, he said as both men nodded and disappeared. He looked down at the unconscious form of his female teammate on the ground. At least you have some uses. Though it would have been preferable in some ways to have the Yamanaka on our team to get our hands on her clan jutsu. She likely would have had more mental resistance to being turned into a whore to bring the mutt to heel under me. The next morning both Team Kurenai as well as the team consisting of Ami and Anko found themselves once again in the Hokage's office. Alright, I have a mission for each team currently assembled here today. Kurenai, your team will be going to Suna to personally deliver the invitation to the Chunin exam finals to the Yandame Kazekage as his children are participating this year. Kurenai nodded and took the mission scroll from the Hokage. Yes, Hokage-sama. It will be done. Hiruzen nodded and turned to Anko. You two are to go to Nami and retrieve the finalized trade offer from the new daimyo. I believe you two know each other? Yes, sir, she's the daughter of the bridge builder who we took on the escort mission for not long ago. Her name is Tsunami. Hiruzen nodded. Good, as Ami doesn't have a team currently she won't be eligible for the exams this time around. However, given her work with you and as a substitute for Naruto during his solo missions, she's an excellent candidate for field promotion in the near future. Normally I'd say don't rush back and wait until the month break before the finals. But seeing as you're the proctor for the second exam, you'll need to be back within the next 6 weeks. Is that doable? Yes, sir. The trip took about a week with the civilian client tagging along, but Ami can consistently move at mid-Chunin speeds for several hours at a time, so it should only take us half the time to arrive and return. Hiruzen smiled and nodded. Good, then while you're there I want the two of you to put eyes on the village. See how their rebuilding process is going and report back if they've established any kind of military presence during the time you've been gone. Yes, sir. Anko said as she turned to Ami. Let's head back to the compound and pack. We can leave together from there. You got it, Anko-sensei. Ami said in a slightly teasing tone. Kurenai turned to her team and nodded. You three go and pack for a 3-week trip as well. We'll meet at the gates in 4 hours to depart for Suna. The 3 genin nodded as Naruto moved behind Hiruzen's desk and gave the old Hokage a small hug. See you when I get back, Gigi, he said, causing the women in the room to smile at the display between the two and be too distracted by it to notice the old Hokage slip an envelope to the young clan head. Be good, Naruto-kun, and try to make good impression on the Kazekage. If you're sure about taking my hat at some point, you'll be working with him a lot in the future. Sure will, Gigi. He smiled as he climbed to the window sill. Naruto, the door works just fine, Hiruzen said with a sigh. Windows are more fun. He smiled as he leapt from the window and across the rooftops. Great, now there's 2 of them doing that. Hiruzen thought with a sigh as he watched the young blonde boy race off back to the Uzumaki compound. After reaching the compound, Naruto was greeted by both Ami and Anko, who'd come back to prep for their own mission to Nami. Anything in particular you want us to do while we're in Nami? Anko asked. Just some basic intel gathering. Get with Tsunami-chan and talk to her about how far they are in the rebuilding process, and discuss with her if there have been any recent converts to Sek-chan's pantheon, he said as he reached into his jacket and produced a small scroll. I also want you to give her this. It contains an order of chakra metal I managed to get my hands on. It's not much, however. It should be more than enough for her to create a set of swords for her elite guard that can conduct chakra. The scroll also contains a small stack of chakra paper for the academy and the militia to split, as well as some books on basic chakra theory, ninjutsu, and genjutsu that I had my clones copy onto blank journals. He looked to Anko. My informant, the one who told me about the invasion, will be there too. She'll be working as an instructor at the academy in genjutsu. Make contact with her and have her tell you where the academy stands so far. If necessary, we might take a few prisoners during the invasion and have them re-educated before putting them in the academy. Ask her if she has anyone in mind. Anko nodded as she leaned up slightly and gave him a small peck on the cheek. You've grown into an incredible shinobi, and a fine leader, Ruto. I'm sure your folks would be proud. Naruto smiled and leaned down, kissing her forehead. Thank you, Anko-chan. I'm just happy the time is almost here where we can love and be together openly is almost here, he said, causing Anko to blush slightly as she slugged his arm playfully. Dumb flirt. Naruto smiled and turned to Ami. Ami-chan, you've grown into quite the young kunoichi over the past couple of months. I'm sad I won't be able to bring you to the Chunin exams with me, but I know that once I do make Chunin, you, me and Anko can go on plenty of missions together, and they'll either give you a promotion or I'll shove your mission record up the council's ass sideways. Ami giggled slightly as her boyfriend's antics, as she leaned up and wrapped her arms around his neck, giving him a long, slow kiss. Her posture causing the hem of her own traveling coat to fall back slightly, freeing her long tanned legs, which Naruto only freed more by pushing the bottom of the coat back and placing his hands on her hips. Be safe, my goofy champion. That goes for you too, my seductive priestess and sexy assassin, he said with a smile as he looked between the two of them. After bidding farewell to Anko and Ami, Naruto made his way to the Harino residence. Once ensuring that Mabuki's chakra signature was the only one inside, he slipped in through the back window. Removing his sandals, he made his way silently up the stairs to her bedroom, where he found the young mother engaging in a few stretching exercises. He watched for a second, marveling at the size and roundness of her backside and her tight workout shorts, as well as the toneness of her long creamy legs. He waited for her to rise before moving in quickly and wrapping his arms around her waist. Hey there, beautiful. Mabuki let out a cry that would have fit more if it had come from a young schoolgirl before hearing the voice of the person who'd grabbed her. She turned her head and came face to face with the cerulean eyes of her secret fiancé. You jerk, you nearly gave me a heart attack, she scolded playfully. Naruto chuckled and leaned in, playfully nibbling on her ear. Be grateful I'm a man of restraint. After watching you bend over like that, it took all my willpower to wait for our honeymoon instead of just ravaging you like a beast in heat. He emphasized the statement with a playful growl as he continued nibbling her ear. Mabuki blushed and slipped his hold, playfully slapping his shoulder. So what brings you here, Casanova? Naruto smiled and cupped her cheek. Well, I'm heading out on a mission, and it only seems appropriate that I say goodbye to my fiancé before disappearing for a week or two, he said as he rubbed his thumb over her cheek. Mabuki blushed heavily but gave him a small smile. So, you're not going to treat this like a political play? I really will be your wife? Naruto smiled and encircled her slender waist as he pulled her into him. He noted she was a bit thicker than Kurenai or Anko, but he chalked it up to her being retired and only exercising enough to stay in shape rather than her wanting to be combat effective, though he found it attractive nonetheless. To him it was a perfect mixture of motherly warmth mixed with the deceitful deadliness of a kunoichi. I wouldn't have proposed to you if I didn't see a future with you, Mabuki-chan. I plan to love and cherish you just as much as my other partners, he said reassuringly as he pressed her thinly covered breasts against his black undershirt. Mabuki blushed as she felt his heart beat against her own modest breasts. She looked up at him and smiled. She would be lying if she said she didn't enjoy how safe she felt with his arms around her waist, or how much his natural musk made her feel at home when she was pressed against his well-toned chest. Reaching a delicate hand up, slender fingers curled around his cheek as she gazed up into the vast ocean that was her fiancé's eyes. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled and leaned down, capturing her lips in a soft, warm embrace. Mabuki felt herself melting into the kiss as her arms wrapped softly around his neck. She felt like a teenager again, having her first kiss with Sim back during the war under the Hokage monument before they'd both been sent off to the front lines. Only this kiss felt even more passionate than the previous one. While she did care for Sim, sometimes more than friends normally did, the two had never been truly serious about each other, mainly because neither wanted their children to feel like they were replacing their fathers. In her case, she found it justifiable as her husband had died during the war. However, she knew Sim only said that for her sake, as she outwardly despised the cowardly bastard who had fled during the Kyuubi attack and abandoned his family. Nonetheless, she could feel something in this kiss. Something that radiated with love, protection, and adoration from the man in front of her. She squeaked when she felt his tongue slip mischievously into her mouth and quickly dominate her own tongue. She tried to put up a small fight for dominance, but quickly found herself melting into the kiss and the embrace of her lover. Naruto pulled back, leaving a small string of drool between the two of them as he looked down at her. I'll be back soon, my little spring rosebud. Mabuki panted lightly as she looked up at him with dark red cheeks. I know you will, just be safe. Always. He smiled, disappearing in a blur of leaves, leaving behind a note for her. Mabuki picked it up and read it to herself. Make sure you get back into training. You don't have to push yourself to become a jonin or anything. While I like that perky but your housewife workouts have blessed you with as one of the future matriarchs of the Uzumaki and Namikes, you need to be able to represent our clan at least the Chunin level. Love, Naruto. Mabuki's cheeks darkened as she read and reread the letter. For one, she didn't realize he actually liked her but that much, considering he hung out with jonin like Anko and Kurenai who were in much better shape than herself. Hell, even his teammates and that girlfriend of his Ami could technically be considered in better shape than her, given she was retired and the three of them were pushing Chunin in terms of skill. More than that though, her heart fluttered when he called her a future matriarch, and called it our clan. He doesn't just see me as a burden or a concubine, she thought to herself as she clutched the letter between her breasts. He thinks I have potential as an actual member of the clan, she thought to herself as tears of joy began forming in her eyes. She knew her branch of the clan would likely be the weakest and would most likely specialize in clerical and financial areas of the day-to-day operations of the clan. Given Hana was a clan heir, Ami was well on her way to being a Chunin with no signs of stopping under his other lover Anko, and while he denied it, she couldn't help but believe that he had his eyes set on his two clan heir teammates, and possibly even his sensei. That left the Haruno branch of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan as the physically weakest currently. Though she didn't yet know of the blonde's budding relationship with the new daimyo of Nami, she was now reassured that he would love their children just as much as he would love the children of his stronger wives. I wonder if I should talk to Tsum about possibly joining this relationship. If not with him, then finally making it official between the two of us. Who knows, if he's a good hubby, might even let him watch or make it a three-way. She thought as her inner deviant took the reins slightly towards the end. In the Uchiha compound, Kakashi, Kiba, and Sasuke were sat around a small table accompanied by a new guest, Danzo Shimura. So, after this invasion, what's your plan? Sasuke asked. I will give you a tag to seal the one-tails. Use it and bring the boy to Route where the beast will be transferred to Sakura. This will both give her the power to thoroughly beat her mother, as well as boost her own chakra reserve significantly, making her a much better candidate for breeding new Uchiha. Danzo said as the aforementioned Sakura walked into the room dressed in a maid's outfit that could only be classified as lingerie. The top was a black bra with white ruffled trim. The fabric was nearly transparent, and the bottoms weren't much better, being a skirt if one could call it that, which barely reached below her backside and was made of such flimsy material the slightest gust of wind would cause it to billow, and reveal the matching G-string panties underneath, which was happening every time she walked into the room, considering Kiba had kept the window by the door cracked for just such purposes. I brought you boys some drinks, she said as she set some tea in front of Danzo and Sasuke, while setting a bottle of sake and 2 dishes in front of Kakashi and Kiba. Lunch will be ready shortly. She smiled, believing herself to be playing the part of the dutiful housewife instead of that of a brainwashed slave. Sasuke looked to Kiba as she left. Remind me again why you wasted your money buying her that ridiculous outfit. It's a treat for me and a treat for her. Besides, it's called positive reinforcement. You treat it as a gift for her hard work, and she's more likely to stay complacent because she thinks her hard work is being rewarded, he said, mimicking the explanation Kakashi had given him earlier. Sasuke sighed and shook his head. His male teammates were shameless perverts, but they had their uses, which was why he didn't mind lending the future Uchiha breeder to the two of them if it kept them happy, though he would need to look into an actual wife at some point. Turning to Danzo, he returned himself to the matter at hand. Okay, so we sealed the Ichibi into Sakura. What then? We allow Hiruzen to be assassinated, but we make sure everyone knows it was you who defeated the Ichibi, and we make the push for you as the last member of the founding clans to become the 5th Hokage. Sasuke smirked as he felt the plan coming together in his mind. He knew he'd have to kill Danzo at some point, but for now this alliance would work. Danzo meanwhile was thinking the same thing about the petulant and spoiled Uchiha brat. True, he'd have preferred to work with the Uzumaki boy as he seemed to be more practical and mature, but the boy had far too many influential figures surrounding him who would block his attempts if he tried to get close to the boy. For now I'll deal with the fool Uchiha, at least until he breeds the first of the new lineage. Naruto's team was slowly trudging their way through the arid deserts of Kaze no Kuni. Behind them, one of Naruto's shadow clones was currently dragging what looked like a large kiddie pool that seemed to be set on a wagon. while 4 other clones sat inside attempting to pop water balloons with their chakra. Naruto-kun, you shouldn't be wasting water in the desert like that. Kurenai chided lightly as they walked through the fine sands of the seemingly endless desert. I'm not wasting it. If you'll notice, they've been at it for several hours and there is no water in that pool. Kurenai raised a well-manicured eyebrow as she looked over and noticed that her lone male team member was telling the truth. The pool was bone dry, not even droplets to prove that the water had merely evaporated. How? There's a couple of seals on the bottom of the pool. As the balloons pop, the one seal collects the water. When we stop to take a break, the second seal will cool the water after it's released from the first seal. Then when we get ready to go again, we can seal it back up as a portable oasis to keep cool. True, he didn't necessarily need it. QB regulated his body temperature, making it impossible for him to contract hyper or hypothermia. He was also used to the sands of Kaze, as he'd taken several missions to the border with Anko over the years. He was certain if it were just him and Kurenai, they'd be more than able to make it to the other side of the desert within a matter of hours. However, given that this was Ino and Hinata's first time to the region, he knew they would have to take it slow, and likely stop at the way station for the evening to give the two a chance to win, and keep them from exhausting themselves. That's a pretty ingenious method to help with surviving in the desert. Kurenai complimented as they continued trekking through the desert. So, where are we stopping for the evening? Ino asked as she adjusted the sun hat that Naruto had provided for both her and Hinata. Old Suna, Naruto said, having been given the lead on the mission by Kurenai in order to assess his leadership skills going into the Chunin exams. Old Suna? Hinata asked curiously. It's around the midway point between Suna and the border. It was the place where Suna was originally founded by the first Kazekage when an oasis was discovered there. However, as Suna expanded, and more resources were able to be allotted to exploration, a larger oasis was discovered deeper in the desert within a naturally occurring bowl of large stone plateaus. Nowadays the area is used as a rest area for travelers on their way to Suna. That's quite interesting, Naruto-kun. How did you learn of this? We didn't have much time to prepare before leaving. I've spent time studying different countries, and I had a few of my shadow clones review the map while I was packing to ensure we took the right route. Naruto smiled at her, happy that Hinata was growing more confident when speaking to him. After another hour or so of walking, Kurenai noticed that her 2 female students were beginning to show signs of exhaustion and decided to stop for a break. Alright, let's go ahead and stop here for an hour or so before heading to the rest area. Naruto nodded, taking note to watch his teammates' fatigue in the future. Alright, let's see if this works. Naruto smiled as he formed a hand sign. Earth-style rampart, he said before a small platform rose about 2 feet off the ground. Kurenai looked at him curiously. What is that for? It's a lot easier to plant stakes in stone than it is in sand, he said with a smile as he unsealed a pavilion that his clones quickly went about setting up while he unsealed a portable changing room. Alright girls, you can get into your swimsuits in this while we set up the pool and chairs. Ino giggled. This was just an excuse to see us in our swimsuits, wasn't it? Naruto chuckled. No, but I'm not above taking advantage of the situation by having my clones stand guard from every angle, he teased. Ino blushed slightly and punched his shoulder playfully as she waited her turn for the changing area. Perv. It's only being a perv if you do it without consent. He leaned in and tickled her ear with his warm breath. Otherwise, it's just foreplay. Ino let out an uncharacteristic squeak as she turned bright red. I am telling Ami then. I'm in the CRA and I've already told Anko-chan and Ami-chan, you'll have to try again. Naruto teased, running his finger down Ino's spine. Ino shivered slightly as she looked back at him. Does that mean you'll be telling Hinata about it? You know she's had the largest crush on you forever. Yes, if you're both willing, I'd like to start dating after the Chunin exams. That sounds good to me, she said as she kissed his cheek and moved to take her turn in the changing room. Naruto watched as the last of his team exited the changing room. Hinata was wearing a light purple one-piece swimsuit that tied around her neck, with a slightly higher cut in the back. The fabric stretched taut over her developing C-cups and clung to her wispy athletic waist. Ino was wearing a dark blue bikini, the top of which tied around her neck in a similar fashion to Hinata's one piece, and held up her budding B-cups. her tight stomach left exposed as the V-line of her abdominal muscles leading down to the high-cut string bottoms. Kurenai was dressed in an interesting string bikini. It held a black and white design with a red flower printed across the right breast. It perfectly pushed up her low D-cup bust, and showed off a flat-toned stomach that could only become so well defined from years of training. The bottom sat on her mature hips and perfectly framed her large round backside. Well, Naruto-kun, as the only man here, what do you think? Kurenai asked, wanting to tease her male student a bit. Naruto gave the three women a charming grin. You three look amazing, like three beautiful angels guiding me through the desert. The three women blushed in varying degrees at the flirtatious words of their male teammate. Flirt. Kurenai muttered, guilty as charged. Naruto said as he stripped off his shirt and pants before taking a seat in the pool. Come on in, the water is nice and cool. He smiled as the clones unsealed 4 electrolyte drinks from his pouch before handing them out to the group. The girls sat in the water, sighing in relief as the cool water and shady spot lowered their body temperatures and relieved their fatigue. This makes me wish Suna had a beach. Ino sighed as she leaned her head back against the chair that sat behind the edge of the pool. Yeah, I'm sure Anko-chan and Ami-chan are living it up at the beach in Nami. Naruto smiled as he pressed his fist into his lower back, hearing a faint popping sound. Does Nami have nice beaches, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, intrigued by her male teammate's knowledge of the world. It does, especially after we cleared out Gato and I had my clones clean up all the trash they left on the beaches. They're made of a much finer kind of sand than this commonly known as white sand. It's a lot softer than Kaze's sand and makes for some great sand castles, he said, causing Hinata to giggle. Kurenai chuckled lightly and looked at him. Ami and Anko are on a mission too, Naruto-kun. They're not on vacation or anything. Naruto smiled and shook his head. That mission might as well be a vacation. I'm sure Anko-chan is going to take advantage of the beaches to have Ami-chan practice water walking in an environment where the waves of the ocean make it more difficult to stay on the water's surface. However, after grabbing the scroll, I can see her spending most of the day lounging on the beach gossiping with Tsunami-chan, and then drinking zabuza under the table in the evening. Kurenai shook her head lightly. While part of her wanted to refute the boy's claim and defend her friend's professionalism, she couldn't help but agree that what he said sounded exactly like what Anko would likely do. After about an hour or so of soaking and a quick foot rub for his female teammates courtesy of Naruto and his clones, the group once again set off towards the actual rest area for the evening. Naruto-kun, how did you get so good at massages? Hinata asked. All three girls felt like they could tread the desert all the way to Suna after just a light massage. It was part of Anko-chan's training. We used massage to help me in learning the pressure points of the human body while I was studying anatomy for torture and interrogation. Ino nodded. I remember Dad saying anyone who worked in the T-unit had to be an expert in anatomy. Mom told me one time it was one of the few perks of having a husband who was the head of the department, considering his massages were, in her words, otherworldly. As they continued talking, Naruto's senses picked up something moving behind a nearby sand dune. You can come out, or I can blast that dune you're hiding behind until I force you out. Not bad senses, kid. A male voice came from behind the dune as a small group of shinobi wearing scratched-out kiri headbands walked out from their hiding spot. Raiga Kurasuki, A-rank missing ninja of Kiri and member of the Seven Swordsmen. Naruto spoke, unsealing his koppesh from his belt. Pretty well read, brat. But judging by those whisker marks, you're no ordinary genin. Naruto Uzumaki, genin of Konoha, you've got a bounty on you in both aim and kusa, Raiga replied with a smirk, as he drew his kiba blades. Ino's eyes widened as she looked at Naruto. How do you already have a bounty on you? Remember, Ino, I've technically been a genin for 4 years. Aim I'm not sure about, but kusa is because I killed a few kusa chunin disguising themselves as bandits who were kidnapping women on the northern border of Fire Country. Kusa denied it, claiming they went rogue, but put a bounty on me regardless. He then looked over to Kurenai. Kurenai, I'll deal with Raiga since it'll likely be a kenjutsu battle. I need you to deal with his friends and keep them off Ino and Hinata. Ino, Hinata, the men with Raiga are merely bandits. I don't sense any chakra signatures besides Raiga's and whoever he has hiding in that bundle on his back, so you two should use this opportunity to get your first kills out of the way now before the Chunin. Exams? The 3 female members of the team nodded hesitantly. Ino and Hinata were hesitant about killing for the first time, though less than a normal genin given both came from prominent clans and were well informed of the darker aspects of shinobi life before joining the academy, while Kurenai was hesitant to let her student go up against a jonin-level opponent, though less so because she'd not only seen him take out the demon brothers, but also because she'd read the mission report of his time in Nami and how he'd taken on Zabuza Momochi by himself. Naruto turned to Raiga and smiled. What do you say you and I move off to the side a bit so that no one gets in the way of our fight? Raiga smirked and nodded. That sounds good to me. I wouldn't want anyone to tarnish the funeral I plan to give you. The 2 swordsmen jumped off a good 100 yards to the west of the rest of the combatants, and readied themselves for combat. Naruto began by channeling wind chakra into his koppesh before grabbing a kunai from his pouch. When it hits the sand, agreed? Agreed. Raiga replied, readying his kiba blades. The kunai flew into the air, and the moment it touched the sands, the 2 men attacked. Raiga quickly raised his blades in the air and fired a lightning ball at Naruto, who swiftly dodged to the left, and used his koppesh as a catalyst to launch a thin blade of wind at Raiga. Raiga cursed as he dodged to the left. He wished his client hadn't insisted on ambushing the team in the desert to avoid Konoha's border patrols. Why not hire someone from IWA, or even a Suna defector if you want the ambush to happen in the desert? There's not even a water source around here for me to use the hidden mist technique. As it is, there's not even any clouds or humidity around, so I'm limited in the techniques I can use here. He cursed internally as he sent his lightning banquet technique towards Naruto, who substituted himself for a shadow clone before launching a wind bullet into the ground. The result was a thick cloud of dust that obscured Raiga's vision. Raiga, behind you! Ranmaru shouted as a heavy swing came for Raiga's blind spot. Raiga turned and swung only for the opponent to disappear in a cloud of smoke. He's got us surrounded, Ranmaru called from within the backpack as silhouettes of their opponent appeared through the cloud of sand. Raiga looked to see which would attack first, only for Ranmaru to shout a moment too late. Above you! The cry came from the boy as the real Naruto's koppesh connected with the base of Raiga's neck. The strike wasn't fatal but had done enough damage to completely paralyze the former Kiri Jonin. Raiga! Ranmaru called out as Raiga's body gave out from under him. Raiga was able to move his head just enough to look up at his assailant with a smile. Seems it's my funeral today, boy. Do me one favor, as a last request. What is it? Naruto asked as he removed the backpack from Raiga's back, and a small boy crawled out, rushing as fast as his disabled body could carry him to Raiga's side. Naruto turned the older man on his back so he could face the 2 of them with dignity. The boy, he's too soft for this line of work. Not to mention he can't walk much due to his disability. Raiga explained through fits of blood-filled coughs. Take him with you. Make sure he grows up good. I know it's a lot to ask given I just tried to kill you and all, but I'd like it if you could honor this request. Naruto nodded, looking over at the sobbing Ranmaru. I'll make sure he's well taken care of. Thank you. One more thing. As the person who defeated me, the kiba blades are now yours, he said, looking over to where his swords had fallen into the sands. Welcome to the 7 swordsmen, but I thought only those from Kiri could be members of the 7? Raiga closed his eyes for a moment, as he fought back another fit of coughs. The swordsmen transcend villages. During our history we've had members from Kiri and Yazushio before its destruction. Even missing ninjas such as myself and several other members are still considered part of the Brotherhood until we retire or die in battle. You're one of us now. I can tell you're gonna do great things, kid, Raiga said as he coughed up more crimson liquid onto his shirt. I only wish you had the opportunity to learn our history. I'm good friends with your former ally Zabuza Momochi. Raiga let out a pain-filled laugh as he looked up at the pulsing sun. Good. The others won't act against you even if their village or allies ask them to. The bond of the 7 is much stronger than that of a village. You can go to any of them for aid or training, he said before looking at Ranmaru, who was sobbing into his now blood-soaked shirt. Be good, kid, listen to Naruto and grow up strong. Don't make the mistakes we made. Find people who love and support you and return that love and support to them. Ranmaru looked up at him with tear-filled eyes and nodded. I will, Raiga. Raiga smiled and turned his attention back to Naruto. Do it, boy. He smiled as he closed his eyes. Naruto nodded and brought his kopech down on Raiga's throat. As the blade severed his head, Naruto could swear he heard the man's last words. Goodbye, little brother. Naruto gathered Raiga's head in a scroll before gently moving Ranma back and setting the body ablaze. I'll let you stay with him until he burns out while I deal with the remaining bandits. Ranma nodded, watching as the smoke slowly began lifting his fallen brother up into the heavens. Raiga's words from their first battle together against another missing ninja whose bounty they had collected playing in his head. Such is the fate of men like us. We do not pass in hospital beds. We do not grow old. Our hair does not turn gray. We are not buried amongst our kin. We live and we die burning to ash in distant lands. As Naruto approached the fight going on between his team and the remaining 8 bandits, he could see his 2 fellow genin beginning to wane under the prolonged battle. Moving his fingers into a familiar cross shape, he rushed forward, sword drawn. Uzumaki line breaker formation, he called out as he turned the tide, now outnumbering the men in front of him. The group of bandits was stunned when they saw the genin who had gone off to face their leader charging at them with reckless abandon. Their moment of shock proved to be their undoing as a wave of clones descended on them and began hacking the men to pieces. When the battle had finished, Naruto introduced his team to their new traveling companion before turning to one of his clones. Pop and inform the Nami clone of what has happened here. The clone nodded before dispelling. Kurenai raised an eyebrow as she looked at him. What Nami clone? Oh, I figured out a way a while back to seal clones within scrolls. I left a bunch of them in Nami for Zabuza to open one a day, or in case of an invasion, so we could use the memory share aspect of the technique to communicate updates about Nami or important information easily. By the laws of the 7 swordsmen, I'm now the owner of the Kiba blades, so I'm going to see if Zabuza has any information regarding how to use the blades he can share with me. Kurenai nodded. She had to remember sometimes that her male student wasn't a typical genin, and was really only 1 in rank, as given his skills and experience he should be a chunin, or even a tokubetsu jonin at this point. Understandable. Well, we're near the rest area, so let's hurry up and get there so we can relax for the night. My clones and I will be offering full body massages for anyone who wants one, he said with his signature fox-like grin as he lifted Ranmaru onto his back and started towards the rest area. That night, the 3 female members of his team, too sore to object, had taken him up on his offer of a free massage before drifting off to sleep alongside Ranmaru, who had taken his sleeping bag while Naruto himself took the first watch. It was around 4 in the morning when Kurenai realized that Naruto had yet to come to bed with the rest of them within the small hut they called home for the evening. Standing up, she slipped her dress over her black lingerie and slid her pale toes into her sandals before going out to find him on the roof looking out over the desert. Have you been up here all night? Naruto turned to her and smiled. Yeah, given those 2 had their first kills today, I wanted to let them sleep in for the night. Kurenai smiled softly and sat on the ledge beside him, swinging her delicate feet over the edge as she placed a hand on his knee. You're too caring for your own good, Naruto-kun. Literally, you need to get some sleep too. Naruto merely smiled and shook his head. Did you know Anko-chan was a retired UMBU member before joining the tea department? Kurenai looked at him curiously and nodded. What does that have to do with you getting any sleep? When Anko-chan trained me, she trained me the same way the UMBU train rookie recruits. Thanks to that training and my Uzumaki stamina, along with my tenant, I can stay up for around 8 days without feeling any ill effects. 6 if I'm in constant combat. Kurenai squeezed his knee in slight concern and sorrow. She hated that even in this time of questionable peace there were genin who had to leave their childhood behind, much like she had during the Third Shinobi War. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I'm sorry that we've as a village have thrust so much responsibility upon you without you having a say in the matter. Naruto smiled at her and placed his hand on hers, rubbing the back of her knuckles reassuringly. It's okay, Nai-chan, he said, causing her to blush slightly. I'm not mad at any of you for what happened. I know my dad didn't have much of a choice when everything was happening, and I'm glad he didn't sacrifice someone else's kid. Now, do I think he was dumb for not sealing half back in my mother and half into me to keep her alive? Yes. But that's neither here nor there. I didn't get many choices in life, but I made a choice several years ago that set me down this path, and right or wrong, it's my path to walk. It's brought me many precious people, yourself included, so I'm happy I made the choice. Kurenai's cheeks darkened as she looked over at him. You consider me one of your precious people? Of course. Naruto smiled, placing a hand on her heart-shaped cheek. You're beautiful, considerate, you chase after your passion no matter what. You're a woman whose skill is only eclipsed by your ravishing beauty. Kurenai's blush now made her crimson eyes look like Hinata's by comparison. You know you're a real flirt, right? As I said earlier. Guilty as charged. I'm a shameless flirt, but I'm not a liar. Every word I've said is my honest belief. Kurenai smiled and leaned forward, kissing his cheek. Well, if you want to act on it, then you'll need to get through the Chunin exams. Quite an unorthodox method by which to motivate your student Nai-chan. Are you going to promise Hinata-chan and Ino-chan a date if they make it to the finals as well? He asked teasingly. Kurenai's face flushed as she let out a small squeak. I don't think the two of them would be interested in such an offer. Now don't say that, Nai-chan. The sultry voice of Ino came as her toned slender arms wrapped around Kurenai's neck, her budding breasts pressed against her back through the thin fabric of her purple lace bra. Kurenai squeaked as she felt the lack of padding in the bra. She could feel the blonde girl's nipples stiffen through the thin fabric in the cool night air of the desert. Ino, why aren't you dressed? Ino giggled and nibbled on her teacher's ear. Don't go changing the subject, Nai-chan. Answer the question. If I do well in the exams, do I get a date too? It's only fair after all. She grinned teasingly. I suppose you're right. It would only be fair of me to offer it to you as well, and Hina-chan. Ino corrected, giving Kurenai's shapely rear a light smack. Kurenai let out an eep at the brazenness of her student. I don't think Hinata has eyes for anyone but Naruto-kun. That's not true. Hina-chan has told me on several occasions that she has a crush on you. Ino grinned, biting her ear again as if laying claim to it. Kurenai let out a soft moan as she noticed Naruto simply watching in an almost mesmerized state. As she did, oh yeah? I think her exact words the last time we talked about it were, Gods, I'd love to bury a face in those heavenly thighs of hers. Ino purred teasingly. Kurenai buried her head in her hands in embarrassment. How had she become the object of desire for her entire genin squad? I'd be okay with taking Hinata-chan on a date. You hear that, Naru? Looks like we'll be able to save on hotel costs when we're on missions after the exams by sharing a single bed instead of having to split up. Ino grinned like a cat who just caught 3 canaries all to herself. Steam rose from Naruto's ears as he pictured Ino, Kurenai, and Hinata cuddled up to him in bed in nothing but their nightgowns. Naruto Uzumaki, you get those images out of your head right this instant. Kurenai shouted in embarrassment. No use, Nai-chan. I think our little Naru has those ideas permanently locked in the spank bank. If the presence of little Naru is anything to go by. Ino giggled as she pointed to the bulge in Naruto's pants. Both Naruto and Kurenai went red-faced and began stammering. Ino merely giggled as she walked off with a bit of extra sway in her hips, giving the two a good view of her purple thigh as she did. When she re-entered the hut, she leaned down, nibbling on Hinata's neck. Wakey wakey, Hina-chan, she whispered, rubbing the other girl's thigh. Hinata moaned as she looked up at Ino through half-lidded eyes. What time is it? She mumbled cutely as she rubbed the sleep from her eyes. The thin strap of her tank top sliding off her shoulder as she sat up. It's time to wake up and make breakfast so we can take off before the sun comes up. Ino smiled as she rubbed Hinata's thigh affectionately. Besides, your best girl Ino just snagged you a date with Nai-chan if you do well during the Chunin exams, just like the date you'll be getting with Naruto after the second exam. Hinata's eyes widened as she looked at Ino. Why, you're being for real? You're not teasing me, are you? Nope, 100% real. She grinned. Hinata blushed slightly. How can I thank you? Well, since Naruto is going to be making us breakfast after he unscrambles his brain from the little show I just put on with Nai-chan, we have a few minutes, and I can think of no better way to start my morning than with a nice fresh cinnamon roll. She grinned as she cupped the shorter girl's chin and brought their lips to meet. Hinata let out a small squeak before she found herself eagerly melting into the kiss. Ino moaned as she felt Hinata return the kiss, and she threw back the covers before crawling under to join her teammate-turned-lover. Both girls allowed their hands to roam freely, exploring each other's thighs, backs, and rears, their breasts pushed against each other, as their tongues explored the other's mouth. While this was taking place, Sekhmet sat on her withered throne. With the number of followers she'd gathered thanks to Naruto, she'd finally managed to return to the Egyptian pantheon in the heavens. Though it felt lonely without her fellow gods, it was good to be home. You certainly are making things interesting, my champion. I only hope that you're prepared for what is soon to come. And that you leave enough room in your heart for this old goddess. She smiled as she watched the goings-on of her champion. Meanwhile, in the Shinto pantheon, Kami was currently giving Yami the silent treatment for her decision to not interfere with the young champion of Sekhmet, and Yami was simply enjoying watching her sister stew in her chair, while the two bickered. Shinigami simply watched the boy from behind her mask, her blue lipstick-painted lips curling into a small smile. You certainly are an interesting one, Uzumaki. I can't wait for my turn to make myself known to you. The rest of the trek to Suna was uneventful, with the group's harshest challenge being the sun beating down on them, though it was made more bearable with help from Naruto's portable oasis, as the group had taken to calling it. When they arrived at the gates, they were greeted by a pair of Suna Jonin who requested their identification cards. After giving the pair their cards to check, they were allowed to enter the city and walk towards the Kazekage Tower in the center. Whom we normally have Chunin guarding the gates. Is security so tight around here they need Jonin on gate duty? Naruto thought as they walked through the main street, taking in the sights of the buildings constructed from slabs of granite and limestone. It's less about security and more about economics. Suna has been in a drought when it comes to missions, as the quality of their shinobi has been in decline over recent years. So much so that their daimyo is sending missions that should be sent to Suna to Konoha instead. Hence why Orochimaru is planning to use them as cannon fodder during his invasion. Having Jonin as gate guards is Suna's way of keeping their best shinobi employed even when missions are scarce, though it has the unfortunate side effect of showing visitors how desperate the village is for funds by showcasing that their most experienced and talented shinobi have time to stand at the gates rather than doing missions. Even though those two didn't seem that much stronger than the two Chunin who normally guard Konoha's gates. Sekhmet mentally explained. Naruto nodded slightly at the explanation. If possible, he'd like to find some way to aid the country to pull them out of their economic spiral. While he held no personal connection to Suna, the land was once the home of his goddess, and he'd like to make it a place she could once again be proud of if possible. I wish Sabuza remembered where the temple was. I'd love to purchase that land from Kaze to explore it more. Once I've regained a bit more of my power, I should be able to lead you there. Maybe another 6 months to a year at our current pace. Thankfully, Nami's population is very much taking to the religion, and their size is roughly half of what Egypt's was during its prime. If we could get Suna or one of the other minor nations on board, we could probably surpass what I was in my prime. Really? That sounds amazing. Remember to be careful though. We don't want to force Kami's hand before we're ready. Yes, goddess. As the group approached the tower, an idea formed in Naruto's mind and he decided quickly act on it. The group was allowed to pass into the Kage Tower, and were met by Raza as they arrived at the top floor. Welcome, Konoha Shinobi. To who do I have the honor of meeting with? My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. I am the squad leader for this mission and I am here to personally deliver your invitation for the Chunin exam finals, he said as he produced the scroll from his jacket and handed it to the taller man. I see the Hokage is still standing on ceremony by sending an envoy rather than a hawk, Raza said with a laugh. He wishes to show his respect in that manner, Lord Kazekage, Naruto said with a slight smile. I see. Well, you are welcome to rest in the village before returning to your own village. I will have my daughter Tamari show you to the hotel we use for envoys. One more thing, Lord Kazekage, Naruto said, stopping the man from leaving. Yes, what is it? He asked curiously. You are sending the team consisting of your children to participate in the exams, correct? Yes, what of it? I'd like to request them for a B-rank escort mission to join my team on our way back to Konoha, he said, surprising the others in the room. Why, pray tell, would you need an escort? Raza asked. When we were about to stop in Old Suna to rest for the evening, we were set upon by a group of bandits led by an A-rank missing ninja from Kiri who were specifically targeting us. It seemed their client had asked them to ambush us when we were within Kaze's territory to avoid the Konoha border patrols. I feel that when word reaches this client of theirs, the person responsible will likely send more assailants, so having some backup Particularly those who are familiar with the desert terrain will be of great help should they find us before we reach our borders. Raza contemplated for a moment. Orochimaru had told him of his plans to have the Konoha team eliminated before they could arrive, and his contingency to have them attacked again on the return trip in case Raiga had failed, given his spy had figured out the newly named clan head and 2 clan heirs would be on the mission. However, if he denied the boy's request, it might tip Konoha off to soon as possible betrayal, not to mention the boy was offering a B-rank mission for his children. The idea then struck him to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, both eliminating the Konoha team and a thorn in his side. Given the rank of the shinobi sent to attack you previously, I'd feel better if you requested an A-rank mission so that I can send a jonin of mine named Pakura to assist you in this matter. She possesses the Scorch Release Kekkei Genkai and would be a valuable asset if this mystery client is desperate enough to send someone stronger after you. What kind of game are you playing, Raza? I expected you to tip your hand and straight up deny the request. Naruto thought as he measured the man. That sounds wonderful. I take it this Pakura will be the squad leader for your shinobi then? Raza nodded, inwardly smirking to himself. Even if Pakura somehow managed to survive, he could blame the deaths of the Konoha shinobi on her, and have her confined to a cell to bred Scorch Release bearing children for his ranks once Konoha had fallen. After all, he expected to lose a few men in the attack, and what better way to replace those too weak to finish off a dying beast like Konoha than with his own army of bloodline users. Yes, Pakura is one of my highest ranking jonin, so she'll be the one to lead the mission. Excellent, then please have her come to my room later tonight so that we can discuss the route leading back to Konoha. I will have her meet you around 6. Thank you for your business, Namikaze. You can drop the mission payment at the mission desk down the hall. Naruto nodded and made a stop by the bathroom. He created a shadow clone and had it hinge into a small desert mouse to spy on the Kazekage while he and his team were escorted to their hotel room after paying for their mission. Naruto was sat in his hotel room when he felt the clone dispel itself, relaying the information the Kazekage had given to his children and their jonin instructor. They were to make it look as if they were attempting to assist, and should anyone from Konoha survive the attack, they were to kidnap them to be used as breeding subjects once the battle was over, as well as either confirm the death of Pakura or, if she lived, have her blamed for the death of the Konoha shinobi. The girl who had escorted them to the hotel, Temari, looked uneasy at the idea, and he could tell she wasn't truly on board with the idea of the invasion. The boy Gaara looked eager to slaughter his group's sensei, while the other boy Kankuro licked his lips at having been promised to father the first children of the 2 clan heirs to pass on their techniques to the Sabakuno family. He was in the middle of contemplating his next move when he heard a knock at his door. Sir Namekaze. A feminine voice called from the other side. Naruto opened the door to reveal a beautiful woman on the other side. She had forest green hair that was tied in a tight bun with 2 long orange bangs framing her face, her eyes an almond brown and her skin the color of fresh cream. She wore a sleeveless dress that tight and a high collar around her neck with bandages that wrapped around her waist, accentuating her large bust that sealed slightly out of the triangular-shaped top. The garment flowed down to around her mid-calf with a slit on the left side that rose to her hips, showing off her long-toned legs. Her arms were covered by light gray glove that rose to her mid-bicep, further accenting her slender shoulders, while her feet were adorned with standard shinobi sandals. All in all, if Naruto had to describe her, the only word her could think to do her justice was breathtaking. You must be Pakura, am I correct? Yes, sir. I was told you wished to speak with me regarding tomorrow's mission? She asked, bowing slightly. Yes, please come in, he said as he moved away from the door. Pakura nodded and entered the room as the blonde genin discreetly activated the privacy seals he placed on the room earlier. So, what is it you'd like to discuss? I'm certain you plan to use the route you previously traveled to return home, correct? Naruto nodded and pulled out a chair and offered her a seat. I'll be frank, Pakura. You're likely to die on this mission. Pakura took her seat and raised an incredulous eyebrow. Do you think so lowly of me because I'm a Suna shinobi, or is it because I'm a woman? Naruto shook his head. Neither. Some of the strongest shinobi I know happen to be women. The reason is because I spied on the Kazekage after requesting the mission. We're going to be attacked again on the way back to Konoha. He plans to either let you die, or have you blamed for the death of me and my team so he can lock you up, and use you to breed scorch-release users for the village after his invasion of Konoha alongside Orochimaru, who is the person who ordered the attack to begin with. Pakura's face hardened. She sensed no deception from this boy. It wasn't like he had a reason to lie to her either, and it was common knowledge that she was often seen as a threat to the Kazekage's power. Unlike Konoha, whose Kage was either chosen by the previous Kage or nominated by the council and then confirmed by the daimyo, Suna's Kage position was seen more as a monarchy, as only members of the Sabakuno clan could take the position, though there had been talk floating around of discontent with the Sabakuno's leadership given the current state of the village. With Pakura being the only other Kekei Genkai user in the village, rumor had spread that she might be the perfect candidate to challenge the Kazekage for his family's rule over the village. And what is it you are suggesting, Sir Namikaze? I give you two options for asylum within Konoha after the mission is over. Either A. Become one of my wives in the Seiri of Konoha, or B. Become a vassal of the Uzumaki clan. He replied simply. Pakura was shocked but thought about it for the moment. Either option placed her much higher politically than her current station within Suna. I'd like to take option B for the time being and see where our relationship goes from there if possible, Sir Namikaze. Naruto smiled and nodded, extending his hand. That works for me, Pakura-chan. Pakura blushed slightly at the instant sense of familiarity he seemed to have with people. If you don't mind my asking, my lord, what is your plan for dealing with Suna's betrayal? Naruto smiled. I've sent word to my allies. They're going to be sending in some backup to help us dispatch the attackers along with the Suna team. Temari seems to dislike the current plan, so I plan to hold her prisoner at one of my outposts and return her once the fighting is over to take over as Kazekage, while I plan to dispose of Gaara, Kankuro and Baki. My lord, Gaara possesses the Ichibi. If you kill him, the beast will run rampant. She warned, looking concerned as they'd be in no position to fight off the beast after dealing with the group. Don't worry, my champion. Kyubi and I have a plan to deal with the beast that also involves healing your new ward's legs. Sekhmet spoke in his mind. Do not worry about that, Pakura-chan. As an Uzumaki, I'm well versed in the sealing of bijou and have a plan on transferring the beast to a new host with a much better seal than the one used by the village. He smiled. Pakura nodded. Very well, my lord. What would you have me do? I will deal with Gaara. You deal with Baki while my teammates immobilize Temari and my sensei takes out Kankuro. If you finish with Baki, aid my teammates before aiding my sensei. Pakura nodded and stood from her seat. May I use your restroom before taking my leave of you for the evening? Naruto nodded, gesturing to the restroom door. A few moments later, Pakura emerged and bowed slightly. Please hold out your hand. Naruto raised an eyebrow but did as he was asked. Pakura placed her hand in his and then removed it before walking to the door with a sway in her hips. A token of my appreciation for your kindness of shielding me from an awful fate, she said, turning her head back to him with a teasing smile as she reached the door. As well as something to remind you to take me on a proper date when all this foul business is over with, she said before exiting the room. Naruto opened his hand and his face went bright red as he unfurled the black piece of fabric she'd placed in it. There in his hand was Pakura's black lace thong. Does this mean she's not wearing underwear? He thought to himself as steam rose from his ears and blood began leaking from his nose. Pakura giggled to herself as she took off back to her apartment to begin sealing away her personal items for her disappearance tomorrow. After he felt Pakura's chakra disappear into the night, he called the other 3 members of his team into his room to inform them of the updates to the mission parameters. After agreeing on a formation, the 4 of them went to bed with Hinata and Ino sleeping together in one queen bed, with Kurenai in the other, while Naruto had the adjoining room. The next morning Naruto dressed and met his team in the lobby before meeting Pakura and Team Baki. Welcome, I'm Pakura and I'll be leading the Suna team as your escorts back to Konoha. A pleasure to meet you, Pakura, Kurenai said, shaking the other woman's hand. I'm Kurenai Yuhi, the Jonin sensei of this team. However, my genin Naruto is the team leader for this mission. Pakura nodded with a small smile. Yes, Naruto and I met last night to go over the route we'll be taking back to Konoha. Sounds good. We should get going before the sun gets too high in the sky, Kurenai said as the teams took off with Naruto, and Pakura took the lead, with Pakura sending a subtle flirtatious wink towards Naruto, who still had her underwear from the night before in his jacket pocket, causing the boy to blush slightly. As the team began to approach old Suna once again, Naruto received the memories of a clone that popped. Looking to Kurenai, he used Konoha hand signals to relay to her that their backup was in place at the station. Kurenai nodded as they continued on their way towards the station. As they arrived, Naruto could sense something was off. "Everyone be on guard. There's someone here," he said as he pulled out his koppesh. As everyone got into their battle formations, the Konoha shinobi and Pakura were on edge when they saw two men in black cloaks with red clouds printed on them. "Naruto Uzumaki, you will come with us," came the stoic voice of the shorter black-haired man. The taller man with a bandage-wrapped sword on his back put his hand in front of the black-haired man. "Hang on, Itachi," he said, looking at Naruto. "Kid, where did you get that sword?" "I killed Raiga and inherited the blades," Naruto replied. The taller man nodded before stepping forward and turning to Itachi. "Sorry, Itachi, the bonds of the seven take priority," he said before taking a swing at Itachi, who disappeared in a flock of crows. Baki growled. "Team, get them!" he shouted. Kisame jumped next to Naruto. "Brat, you and I will take the Jinchuriki." Naruto nodded before whistling as three men led by Zabuza appeared from the nearby buildings. Zabuza helped Pakura with Baki, then helped my team subdue the blonde girl and kill the puppet master. Zabuza nodded, turning to the men, who were shinobi of Nami trained by him to aid in the defense of Nami. They were the best out of the crop of adult-aged shinobi he'd trained, but still barely high genin level. "You lot provide covering fire with your crossbows on the puppet boy." The men nodded, giving him a "Yes, Captain." Naruto smiled as he stood next to Kisame. "Can you summon water with just chakra?" Kisame nodded. "Plenty, you?" Naruto nodded as they both began weaving through hand signs and called out simultaneously. "Water style, water shockwave." Water built up around their feet, before rushing in a tidal wave towards Gaara. Gaara's sand defense rose to defend him, but began to be weighed down by the massive amounts of water bearing down on him. Gaara began to sweat slightly as he was forced to actually concentrate on the sand in order to hold it in place. "What's your plan?" Kisame asked. "We need to take him alive." "I have a plan for the Ichibi." Kisame nodded and rushed towards Gaara across the small lake that had now formed around them. While Kisame did this, Naruto used his koppesh to launch blades of winds and Gaara's sand to force him to split his attention between him and Kisame. Each strike from Kisame shaved away slowly at Gaara's chakra reserves and forced Gaara to pump more chakra into the sand to keep it from falling limp. He was so distracted by the monster of a man in front of him that he wasn't fast enough to notice the blonde blur that was moving behind him. He fell forward from the force as Biju and chakra suppression seals were placed on him. Naruto created two shadow clones to watch the boy as he and Kisame moved to help finish with dispatching Kankuro. Both men were a perfect counter to him, as Kisame was able to cut through his chakra strings while Naruto was able to use wind release to deflect and cut through his puppet's ranged attacks. Kisame smashed the final puppet apart, and Naruto blurred in front of him and severed his head from his neck. "What's the plan for these two?" Kisame asked. "You and Zabuza can take them back to Nami after I deal with the Ichibi. Let's get into Konoha territory before dealing with that, though," he said as his clones disposed of Kankuro and Baki's bodies. The group nodded, taking their prisoners and dashing as quickly as possible towards the land of fire. The quicker they were out of Suna territory the better, especially because they knew Raza would be expecting his team back shortly. When they arrived on the other side of the border, Naruto followed the instructions of Sekhmet to transfer the Ichibi from Gaara to Ranmaru. He used a tighter seal than the shaky one that had been used by Suna. The seal slowly siphoned Ichibi's chakra in order to heal Ranmaru's legs. It also gave him a similar control over sand. However, it would require much more concentration and practice to use than Gaara's due to not have a natural affinity for magnet release. The following morning the group split, with Kisame and Zabuza heading back to Nami with the Gaara, Temari Pakura, and Ranmaru in tow. "So Naruto, what's our plan for dealing with the disappearance of the Suna team?" Kurenai asked. "I sent a message to both Konoha and Suna letting them know we were attacked by Kisame and Itachi, who took Gaara. Itachi killed the Suna team when they tried to chase him, while the four of us managed to force Kisame to retreat. By the time we caught up to where the Suna team was, they were already dead." Kurenai nodded. "That's our story, girls," she ordered Ino and Hinata. Will Suna buy that? Ino asked. Naruto smiled. Don't worry, they won't have a choice. In order to prove that they didn't kill the Suna team and take Gaara, they'd have to admit they hired the two of them and that their team was ordered to attack us. Worst case scenario, we have Pakura back us up, he said with a smile. Ino nodded. Alright, I guess we've got to trust you on this one, but you owe me a date when we get home. Naruto chuckled, nodding. Deal, he said, kissing her cheek, causing Ino to blush slightly. After another day of traveling, the group was back in Konoha. After giving their mission report, the rest of the team was dismissed, while Naruto was asked to stay back. Hiruzen activated his privacy seals and folded his hands. Alright, Naruto-kun, give me the real mission report, he ordered, finding something suspicious considering Naruto was one of the few people aware of the impending invasion, meaning he was already on edge about Suna. Naruto sighed. You're going to want to break out the good sake for this one, Gigi, Naruto said as he grabbed a pair of glasses from the nearby cabinet. Hiruzen nodded and grabbed the bottle he kept in the bottom drawer of his desk, pouring the two of them a drink. I figured it would be a few more years before I'd be sharing a drink with you, my boy. I'm so sorry that we've asked so much of you, and that we've forced you to grow up so fast. Naruto smiled and took the cup from Hiruzen. I understand, Gigi. My life was unfortunately cursed from the moment of my birth. But I've made the best of it, and now I have something worth fighting for, he said as he took his first sip of the bitter rice wine. Your parents would be proud of the man you've become, my boy. Now tell me what happened. Naruto sighed and went on to explain the events of the past several days leading up to the ambush by Kisame and Itachi. Since the Kazekage title is only able to be taken by someone of the Sabakuno clan, I'm hoping that we can convince Temari to stage a coup against the Kazekage if he's still alive following the invasion. Hiruzen nodded and sighed. I've seen too much war, my boy. My generation owes you children an apology. We've caused so much strife in this world that you children must now deal with. Humans are violent by nature, Naruto said, finishing his drink. Conflict is in our nature and will find us no matter the generation. He walked around and gave the old man a hug. Good night, Gigi. Good night, Naruto-kun. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Ruined Empire Coffee for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.